Start broadcast.
And make sure we're muted. There we go. All right. Sorry we're late. It's completely my fault as always. As always. But we got Prime in the house, Stonebender in the house. And we're going to start off with something here that we want to talk about. We'll see if this turns into something that we do once a week based on kind of the feedback from everybody or not. I'd like to do a series on this because I think it's really cool and in depth and everything. But we're going to talk about Bigfoot, and I know I put Bigfoot, but I really do love the name Sasquatch over Bigfoot for some reason. Sounds
Me
cooler.
too, man. Me too. They're kind of interchangeable.
I might change that. And then aliens, and then kind of hopefully tie it all together at some point down the road, whether it's tonight or down the road. But definitely start off with talking about Sasquatch, Yetis, and I don't know why I said Bigfoot. I guess just for layman terms on it, but I do prefer Yeti and Sasquatch over Bigfoot.
Yeah, there's some cool names for them out there.
Right? Yeah, lots of them, and we'll get into it because there's names that they have for this creature that date back to Native Americans that they have terms for as well, and all the way back. I mean, we're talking way back. I mean, I found these entities. They're like they ain't like we talk about Bigfoot. This isn't something new. This stuff goes way back, and this is what's so intriguing about the subject is that the sightings, the what are those called? The glyphics, hieroglyph. Yeah. I can't say that word. The paintings, even to the point that I'll get into at some point that they even have Bigfoot in the cathedrals of Catholic churches. I don't know if you know that. They actually do.
I've never seen that, man. I've seen paintings and depictions of the wild man on like mugs that are from England and stuff like that, but never in church art. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I was doing my research and it went back to showing actually the one of the old cathedrals where it had the statues or the little faces of the wild man. And we'll get into what the wild man is because I really do think the wild man ties into Bigfoot, in my opinion. And I think that's where kind of the /aliens are because I don't, of what really Bigfoot really is. But I don't know if we want to start, just kind of open this up and, we just let you guys know we got Jesse James and Salted Cedar already here. What's up, brothers? And I don't know if you want to talk about your experience, Stone, to start out.
Sure, man. Might as well. Excuse me. Jesse James, Salted Cedar. What's up, guys? I guess I'll just kind of lay that out. This is how I got into this subject. I'd always heard, like anybody, heard of Bigfoot, and it wasn't really on my radar. Everybody's heard or seen, most people have seen the In Search Of back in the 80s, late 80s, whatever, where, Leonard Nimoy hosted it. It was an awesome TV show. And that's the first time me and a lot of other people, I think, have seen the Patterson-Gimlin film where there's, Robert Patterson and Bob Gimlin. I think it was around 67, something like that, or 65 maybe. Got some film of a Sasquatch, and it's one of the most famous. And now it's remastered, so it's taken frame by frame, so it's not so shaky,
And
and
that's
it was cleaned up.
confused with Robert Pattinson, the actor from Twilight.
I don't know that guy, but yeah, nope, it was definitely not him. Definitely not him. That's probably that young vampire dude, right? Like those emo vampires that they have
Are
now.
you talking about the one where it's in the woods? It's like the most famous one. It's in the woods, and
Yeah, it's in an open stream bed. It's in a dry, somewhat dry, like creek bed, but it's one of the most famous, you know, supposed alleged films out there. It's been
if
people
I
have been
show
trying to
that, will I
debunk.
get a copyright strike?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people that have it online, but I have no idea, man. I mean, MK Davis is this guy who cleaned up the footage, and
Yeah,
other
this
people have
is.
done it too and stabilized it. It'd be cool if you did, but don't push your
But
luck, man.
okay, so if it's on Wikipedia, I can't get a copyright strike, right?
I don't know, man. I don't
Oh
know. You
man,
might
I
have to
really need to
consult to
talk
see.
to.
I wouldn't risk it, man. I mean, we can
I
always
really
look
need
at.
to talk to Kay Small and ask her how she's able to like present things from the internet without getting hit. So
Yeah, I have no clue, man. But anybody can look it up later or whatever. A lot of people have probably seen it, but it's pretty amazing. People have been trying to debunk that for a long time, and just to shorten it up a little, like what I find and what makes sense. I've heard other people talking about it, and there's only a handful of pretty good footage of different films, brief films of Bigfoot caught on tape. There's only really a handful, probably about 10 maybe, that are good enough to where you break it down. It's hard to debunk them. There's not too many of them. But one of the main points in a lot of these guys who look at this get sent a lot of this footage and are film and video guys and break it down is one of the main points that it's impossible to fake is where your elbow bends. And that's where the footage of, maybe a hoax or something and something that could be possibly real, that's where the divide is because Sasquatch is known to have the proportions of their arms are, I think it's 20% longer in proportion to human beings. And the legs are slightly shorter. So, if you have a guy in a monkey suit and his arm, you do the proportions on line up the elbows and stuff um, with a human being. You can fake a monkey suit and fake footage all day long, but you can't fake where that elbow bends because if that elbow bends further down, further south from where a human being's elbow bends, that's debunking a hoax right there because you can have the best fake suit or whatever in the world, but if the arms are longer and your elbow bends down towards the middle of your forearm, where your forearm should be, then there's no human being, even if they're 7 feet tall, that the proportions are going to line up like that. In the Patterson Gimlin film, that's one of the ways that people are saying that it's a real animal, because where the elbow bends, where the knees are.
at least share the picture of it without getting hit, right?
I don't know, man. Probably. I mean, there's got to be tons of people even use it for logos and stuff. So there's got to be a lot of different images out there.
Let me know when you can see it.
I'm seeing it right now.
Okay. So this is it. We all know this one. Okay, this is the one.
Links were added to the chat, by the way.
What was that?
I put a link in the chat for the
Okay.
footage.
Nice.
So I mean, if we look at this, right, and they also did I saw a whole documentary where they like they went back out there to discover like how tall it was and so forth, and so, But getting later on, I'm going to get into a little bit more about the actual hairiness of the Bigfoot, what it could be, a theory, and why every time they end up being coming back to a bear. So, but if you look, yeah, this is one of the ones in the video. I know that Stone, correct me if I'm wrong, that this video has been the most taken apart video of any Bigfoot. And this is why this one stands out the most, right? Because they cannot. This is a video they have yet to been able to debunk, right?
Right, man. For a lot of reasons, you know, the elbow being one of them. And there's definitely a few more. The one I find interesting is that, you know, people say that it's possible that they could have gotten such good footage because they were on horses when they got up to that creek bed and their scent was off the ground. And in that area, Bluff Creek, in the mid-'60s, there were wild horses. So that's a smell that would be kind of familiar anyway to a Sasquatch because of the sensitivity in those. I mean, if it's an animal, it can smell, you know, like a hound dog maybe, or like a black bear or something. But the other thing I find fascinating about that is that, and I never had anybody heard anybody say it like this, and it made a lot of sense. There's a Sasquatch guy on YouTube, and he breaks down different films that people send him, and when you look into that footage, you'll have like, I don't know, I think it's a minute and a half or something of stabilized footage of the Patterson-Gimlin film. And the other thing I never thought of, and no one has until this guy brought it up, was that the dude starts filming, Patterson starts filming it. He films it for a few seconds, and then he runs. Like if you look at the unedited footage, he's running towards it to get to stop again and get some more footage of it. And then he stops again for a few seconds. And I think he runs again for a little bit. But if you break it down, he's standing there still a couple of times. The first time, then he runs and he stops again. And probably about 80% of that whole time that he's filming it, he's running towards it. And you could see the camera, you know, moving, and you can tell he's running. And this thing is walking, and it outpaces him.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you run, you know, most of the time you're filming this thing, you stop, you run towards it for a while, you stop, film it for a few seconds, you run. And how can you be running towards it, but yet it's walking and it outpaces you? That speaks to the fact that it could be, you know, maybe 7.5, 8 feet tall. And the other thing I find pretty interesting is that they didn't have, until about 2 or 3 years later, when Planet of the Apes came out, they didn't have that stretch for technology in material. In other words, you can have a piece of material that's like spandex that stretches with fur on it. They didn't have that. The only material they had was for, and when Planet of the Apes came out, which was after, a few years after that film was taken, would be a rigid piece of material with fur on it. And, you know, if they had that, such a big Hollywood production, they would have used it for Planet of the Apes, so it looks more realistic. And you can see the muscles underneath this in the updated, stabilized footage. You can see the muscles underneath it. So I find it pretty interesting that they, you know, these two hillbillies back in the day had better technology as far as, you know, a monkey suit that they could create than a Hollywood studio with a huge budget. That doesn't make sense. That really speaks to the fact that it is real. So there's that. There's the guy running towards it most of the time, and it outpaces him just walking. And there's the bend in the elbow, which is lower than a human being. That you put those three things together, and it's like, boom, right there. It's not easy to say that it's a person in a suit, you know? Plus the head leans more forward. And
well, here's the other thing with the whole suit thing is that I'm sorry, Crip, you were breaking up. I talked over you. Go ahead, Crip.
Oh, no, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just going to say I'd like to add a fourth thing I've noticed about that film and about that creature, and that is it has breasts.
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
man.
So,
So
so obviously there's got to be female ones, right?
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
So
and it was probably could have been like nursing because with chimps and stuff, like their mammary glands don't really get big like that unless they're nursing because it's just probably safer. You get in a fight with some other animal or something. So there are people that theorize that the reason that they got such clear footage also was that it might have been leading them away. It had a adolescent or a juvenile, like a small baby Sasquatch somewhere hidden in the brush, and it was leading these guys away. With its own body, and that's a possibility. But yeah, she's pretty hot.
well, what leads to me is that if you're going to fake it, why put breasts on a costume? That doesn't make sense at all.
Right, it'd be
And
that much harder to fake
exactly.
that.
right. Prime. So, kind of go into like you had shared a couple of videos that were kind of like over an hour long, and when you presented them in our room, I did not have the time to watch them. So you want to kind of touch on that because I know that you said from watching those you had something to bring from watching those.
Yeah, that was in the name of the individual. Give me a second here before I get into it. I actually want to give the link to everybody else here real quick in the chat.
Dude, that was a great presentation too, man. And that guy laid out.
Did you watch it, Stone?
I did. I saw about 90% of it.
Oh shoot, I'm gonna have to go back and watch it. I was at work all day, so I couldn't watch it.
Yeah, I popped it on at lunch. I was mostly listening, and I watched most of the rest of it after work. But there's a lot of guys that have PhDs and degrees that lay out a really good case, man. So, there's a lot of evidence. There's ten, not tens of thousands, but at least somewhere around 10,000 trackways that have been photographed and or cast in just in the United States and North America in
I
the last 20 or 30 years.
I
There's some
dropped
pretty hard evidence.
I dropped the link in there for him. His name is Lloyd Anthony Pye, and basically what his presentation that I sent to you guys today that I watched. He's basically showing how all these fossil records of all these early men, he's postulating over the fact that these could be descendants of Bigfoot itself or Sasquatch. And
Mm-hmm.
what he was basically showing was he was tying into the idea that we were actually genetically made as far as human beings, and he gave a good argument, very good, a lot of evidence that he was showing. One of the main things he discussed is how apes have 48 chromosomes, we have 46, and we can't just lose two chromosomes like that. And then the other thing he postulated was when everyone keeps talking about the missing link between us and them, well, it's more than just going to be one creature. It'd have to be literally a whole entire, that one missing link, and then it'd have to have all his cousins lined up on either side of them because of the amount of changes. He was also postulating how the bone structures of us are lighter than the bone structures of all these other creatures. What he feels is that there's four species. He talked about four species of Sasquatch, and that basically one of these species are actually Cro-Magnon man. And it then tied in towards the end how the Anunnaki were looking for a slave race, and they genetically, more or less, they had to work with something to add in, take one of those species of them and a piece of themselves, and then that's basically where he feels we've arrived from, only 250,000 years ago. I thought it was very interesting, and like I said, I did put the link into the chat so everyone can check it out and see what he says about it, because it made a lot of sense. It definitely fills in a lot of those gaps that science is looking for. He basically did discredit Darwinism completely, that we evolved from it.
And just to let everybody know, so all of your comments that you guys are saying, your thoughts, believe me, we're going to get into all these things. Everything that you guys have brought up in the chat room, we will eventually get into. We can't jump around from one to another. It's got to be a little bit pieced together a little bit better, because just doing research, there's a lot of things I looked into that explains why we haven't found a dead one yet. And I did a lot of research today on that, Stone, because I know that we talked about that.
Yep.
And the history of it and what it is, and is it a hoax, and what are the hoaxes and what it's not, and the reality of all the people that we see, everything you guys are bringing up in the chat room. Believe me, at some point, and I'm hoping this becomes a series, because I think there's so much to it that I don't think we're going to be able to touch into all of it tonight. And this is kind of just an opening about it. But we will definitely be diving into each and every one of these different scenarios as the questions that people always bring up with it, and understanding it, and going all the way back. There's not going to be something that,
Here's the thing. He in that video, he does say that he saw a dead one. That there was a guy going around in the 70s and all the way up to about 1980 who had one frozen. And
I saw that. I read that today, where after they defrosted it, see, this is the thing, and this is why we're going to have to look into each one of these, because I saw exactly what you're talking about. When they defrosted it, they found out that it was an empty skull, it was rubber feet, it was fur. So, I mean, there's a lot of, the problem is that we also look at is like the hoaxes compared to non-hoaxes, and the reality. I think what's more important is that as we go through this, is that we look at the evidence of the fact that how many people have seen this, how long have people been seeing this, and I think more importantly, if we go back to 100 years ago when they first started talking about this, I think that that if with everything is you're going to get more truth through that, because in today's society there's too many people out there that are going to do hoaxes for I read a lot of times where people they spent $60,000 for their hoax, for their to get publicity. So there's a lot of crazy stuff out there, but nonetheless, my opinion, there's Bigfoot Sasquatch is something definitely in the realm of a reality. What that reality is, we'll get into in our opinions. Do I know 100%? No, but there's opinions, and we'll present different evidence of all the different theories from A to Z on it. So I'm hoping, it could get like, I don't know how long you've been in Bigfoot, Prime.
For me, actually, it's been a long time. My mom's actually got some. I've heard a couple of very interesting stories recently, as a matter of fact, from my mother, who was living out in the Ocala National Forest until she moved up north.
Yeah, my parents even had an experience where they were camping, and had an experience with Sasquatch. And so, I mean,
Huh.
but I know that like Stone and I, we've been into it for a long time.
Oh yeah, I've
Um,
been down that rabbit hole a bit. I postulate even as far as when people sit there, and I know how they like to sit there and say this is a hoax. Well, we all kind of got the suspicion, like with the Giants and cover up with the Smithsonian and that. Who's to say the government didn't go and try to make them look like hoaxes to try to cover that up too?
mm-hmm.
Sure, man. They discredit it all the time. There's an active cover up that's there's people assigned to it right now. There's so many people that are into this subject now because of the resurgence on television.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with the TV shows is, I mean, I don't have cable. I've heard a couple of these TV shows. They're pretty ridiculous, and I think they're almost a psyop to make it seem ridiculous and to debunk it. There's some people that are presenting good stuff, I think, out there on TV, but the only money to be made on this is on television, and that's a very small percentage of the researchers that are out there on YouTube and on the internet. There's just so many people now that are taking people's encounter stories. There's so many encounter stories that I've heard on podcasts. Um, and I'm talking like, I've heard maybe close to 1,500, 2,000 or something over the last 5 years. And I swear, I think that there's maybe four, maybe five that I've heard that I'm like, all right, this guy's full of it. His encounter, his story doesn't really match up with a lot of the commonalities that all these other stories have, and I just don't believe him. But
Yeah.
there's tons of them that I've heard, like, because when you have an experience that's like traumatic, and a lot of times it is traumatic because people are seeing something that doesn't exist, and you just
Mm-hmm.
don't know where to put that and categorize that. And when you don't tell anybody about that, and then you hook up with one of these YouTube channels, you lay out your hour and a half long encounter, that trauma comes right back to you. And I've heard at least 10 of these guys, hunters, hikers, whoever, police officers have seen them. They're recounting their story live, and they start getting choked up, and they have nothing to gain. There's no money in telling your story on YouTube, or probably even a lot of YouTube channels. There's hardly any money in it. And the only thing they have to gain is, ridicule sometimes. And that speaks to that phenomenon too, I think, man.
Definitely.
So let me ask you guys this. I think that's been a very great opening on this. Where do you want to dive in first into this? Of all the skepticism and the questions, different avenues, the different rabbit holes that you can go down with this. And again, we're just starting with Bigfoot. We haven't even got to the alien part. So I don't even know we'll get to the alien part tonight. But where do you want to start with Sasquatch tonight? Like what because there's so many questions in the chat room. Where do you guys want to start with? Like to dive into, and I could pull up information on in Google as much as I can that I can share and go through that way, because I've done some research as well as you guys have. Well, like what would be like you guys, where do you want to start with as far as like the first step into this? I mean, you want to go into something deep, something as simple as the timelines of when people see it. I always find that fascinating. If you always look at like when people actually have testimonies of when they actually see this Sasquatch, never matches up when you watch these stupid television shows of when they go out and look for them, which I never understood, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything's either that dusk or at like 6 a.m. Yet you watch all these shows that do the Sasquatch hunting, and they go out between midnight and 3 a.m. I don't get
True.
that, right? Why would you do that? nobody reports a sighting at 3 a.m. in the morning. Nobody.
Well, they report, road crossings sometimes, late in the night and stuff. But from what I understand, they can do whatever they want during the day too, but they're mostly nocturnal. And, cats can see in the dark, and a lot of animals can see in the dark. They can see in the dark. And I think from what I've heard, they return to the higher elevations and wherever they actually sleep during the day, before the sun comes up. And at night is when they're active, when they're hunting, where a lot of these areas you hear a lot of vocalizations from them. And a lot of the cutting edge stuff right now is in audio and not necessarily video, because it's easier to get audio. It travels a long time. There's a lot of this guy Ron Moorhead from the 70s. It's a famous recording called the Sierra Sounds, or you can look it up by finding
because the Sierras are right my neighborhood. I grew up there.
Oh, so. Yeah, dude, around what's that volcano that exploded out there? What's it called? Not Shasta. It didn't explode, but what's that volcano out west? Not Mount Shasta, but
I think I know what you're talking about.
In Oregon?
Yeah, I can't think of it right now.
You talking about the one?
Yeah, it went up in the 80s. Yep, it went off in the 80s for a little while. I mean, there's Shasta's around Mount Shasta's kind of a hotbed too. I can't think of it, but that's another area that's hotbed of activity. Eastern Pennsylvania, which is right south of me. I'm in the Catskill Mountains in New York State, and what I didn't know is that in
Helens.
There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you, honey.
Mount St. Helens, and supposedly I've heard some stories where after that volcano went off, there's some people that went up there to check it out, and they found a few bodies of Sasquatch that were killed by that, and that was covered up. I mean, the Smithsonian Institute, that's how I remember it anyway. Smithsonian Institute there's an active cover up. A lot of people will know about with giant bones, and there's a lot of documentation of that. And there's an active cover up with Sasquatch as well. But I didn't know that they were in all 50 states except Hawaii until recently. Like, let me just give you an overview of like why I got into this. It was about 6 years ago. And I've always heard of the Bigfoot. I was really never into it, and I always assumed that I was like, yeah, it probably is real. But I always thought it was out west and in Washington State and California, Canada. And I'm out here hiking in the Catskill Mountains in New York, 2 hours north of the city. And I'm up in a ravine. And the ravine leads down to a stream, rocky bed. There's a swimming hole here and there, but most of them are downstream where people go, bigger swimming holes. And 90% of the time when I go out in nature, I go out alone because I just don't have friends that are into hiking as much. I'll hang out with some people sitting around a water hole and just hang out all day. But a lot of the time I just want to explore. So a lot of the time when I would go out, it would be by myself. So I go up in this ravine, and it's steep, and there's little pools of water. It's opened enough to where there's sunlight, and people just don't go up there because everybody's attracted to the swimming holes, which is a lower elevation, And I'm going up there to where there's a waterfall, and I've been up there before. And the waterfall, you can't really hike too much, further than that. It's like a cliff, pretty much 30 feet. So I'm hanging out for a while. I was probably in that particular ravine for 2 hours, And I turn around and I start to leave. So the first feeling I get is, and it was a beautiful day out, like there's nothing. I ate normal food. I was, perfectly content. It was summertime. I don't really ever get ill or anything, especially unexpectedly. The first thing that I feel is an overwhelming sense of like fear from out of nowhere. And I'm not scared to go in any part of the woods. I mean, all we have is black bear around here that are the biggest, animal, and they turn around and run pretty much if they see you. And I rarely even see black bear. And I'm going down the stream. I'm walking down. You have to like climb down little cliffs, here and there, and it's kind of flat for a little bit. And I feel this feeling of, what am I doing here? Like, what if I get hurt? I'm questioning myself. I feel this intense feeling of paranoia and fear from out of nowhere. And I'm starting to think like, gee, what did I eat? Did I eat something weird? No, I ate normal things today. I have a strong stomach. Like, it wasn't my stomach that hurt. And I don't know why I'm feeling like this. Like, what am I doing up here? I could twist my ankle and nobody would know I'm up here. Like, I've been up there a bunch of times and in around those mountains, 100 times. Never felt like this. So I sat down, um, just to get my wits about me. I sat down for a minute before I continued out of there. And from out of nowhere, there was a splash behind me in a little pool of water. It was probably about 6 feet wide, 2 feet deep. And I didn't hear any like crumbling of a rock falling off a cliff or rolling down a hill into the water. It was just nothing but net, just a splash, and then another splash. Like if you throw a rock in water and it's big enough, you hear two splashes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 15 feet behind me. So I got up and I walked over to it. I saw the water splashed out on the dry rocks, and there's a black stone, probably the size of a football and roughly like long like that, like an oval, in the bottom of this pool of water, right around, you could try locate the splashes that it made to right to this stone that was just sitting in the sand, 2 feet underwater. That didn't look like any other stones around. It was like darker, and it didn't chip off a rock or anything like that. And it was pretty open where I was. The closest vegetation, which was pretty thick, is on the sides of this ravine, because everywhere is steep that you look, the sides of it, you're either going up or down. If people pass you, you know it because you see them, you hear them coming, you smell them coming sometimes. People usually travel in groups. There's nobody around, no trails on the side of it, to the left or the right where people could be. And the closest is probably 40, 50 feet to where the vegetation was. So this rock must have traveled 40 or 50 feet right behind me. So now I'm scared and I'm leaving anyway. So I left the rest of the way. I felt a little nervous, but that original feeling subsided, and I go home. And I started listening to people's encounters over that. And over that same summer, I hear all these different encounters. One of the commonalities is to get that I hear in other people's encounters is if they want you out of their area, they throw rocks at you. They throw little pebbles. They throw pine cones. They'll throw a big rock. There's a lot of fishermen that have had rocks the size of basketballs thrown into the lake, that they're fishing in these areas that aren't really even that wild. They're on the edge of civilization, these things, close to towns and cities, any green belt. When you look on Google Earth, that goes from one town to the other one is pretty much at night like a highway for them. And I'm hearing these commonalities. And one of the things that people report sometimes, maybe every one out of every 20 or 30 encounters or something, or maybe one out of every 50, is something that is theorized to be like a low frequency sound that they can produce that is, I've heard people say it could be from 8 to 20 megahertz. I'm not sure what that really means as far as sound, but it's not something you hear with your ear. It's something that you feel. And I've experienced that. Then I went back, listened to encounters because I started getting into it. And that's one of the commonalities is rock throwing and this thing that people are calling infrasound, to where they can pretty much aim it towards you or in your direction, and you don't hear it with your ear, but you feel it, and you feel this, sense of dread. I've heard people talking about, just like I felt. Physical pain, which I didn't feel, but I've heard some infrasound encounters that were so bad that the guy was pissing blood afterwards. I'm glad that didn't
Wow.
happen to me, but and that's a thing with some other animals, like lions use that to stun their prey before they jump on them. Crocodiles use it, and whether it's infrasound or not, it's some kind of a sound that they produce. It's some kind of a vibe or vibration that they can produce that will make you turn around and go the other way. And I found it pretty fascinating that first I get that feeling, and then I sit down 20 seconds later, there's another commonality in all these stories, and that's a rock being tossed at me. And if it wanted to hit me, it probably could have, but it aimed behind me to send me on my way. Now, I didn't lay eyes on a Sasquatch ever. That's my first experience. Let me just rattle off. I don't want to gum up the whole stream here, but let me rattle off my other ones quick, just so people know why I got into this. The second one was in another area, probably about 45 minutes away. It's in the Catskill Mountains. And, like I said, eastern Pennsylvania is kind of a hotbed of activity. Well, if you go northeast at the end of the Appalachians, that leads you right into where I live, Catskill Mountains. So I'm in another area. I'm hiking alone. I'm in a bigger stream this time. And I'm leaving again, going upstream this time. And it's not in a ravine, it's a flat stream. There's no wind that day. There's no breeze. And a tree about 10 feet tall, a dead tree, broken off at about 10 feet and probably about maybe 12 inches wide. I hear a snap, like a break, like a report, like when you break something, not when something slowly falls or the tree just happened to fall. And I turned around. I heard it was so loud. It was about maybe 30 or 40 feet behind me. It was loud enough to where it got my attention, and I turned around in time to see it land in the stream. And now at this point, this is months later, at this point, I am thinking Bigfoot. And as I listened to more encounters over that year, trees being pushed down or branches thrown at people is another commonality.
Mm-hmm. Did you hear the
And that kind of,
banging on the trees?
the tree knocks. Yep.
Yeah.
I've heard those here and there. I've heard them here and there. I never really thought much of them, but that's supposedly a communication between them, because if there's one around, there's two or three, four around. And, if they have eyes on you, you don't see them, they communicate to each other with tree knocks. So a lot of these guys on TV go out and knock on trees. And, that's like they're like one trick ponies, I just don't really see much value in learning about this subject on television, really, to be honest. But, that's another commonality, the tree pushdown. In that same area, I was snowshoeing, probably like that next winter, I would guess. And I'm going up, heading towards the top of this pretty big waterfall that people go to. But I'm snowshoeing. I can see that there's nobody on the trail ahead of me. And I got off the trail. I hook a left, and I'd headed up this steep hollow. And I was like, I'm not going to go up to the waterfall. I'm going up this way, and I want to see what's up here. So I get up to pretty much the top of that area, which isn't by the waterfall itself, but kind of hooking around it a little bit. And I found a trackway in the snow. And now I'm at this point, I have a little experience listening to people's trackway stories even. And I see a trackway. And the trackway was just like people report it. The footprints are in line, not like one's to the left, one's to the right, like a human being, but they're actually in line. And a lot of reports are that they're in line. They were probably about 16 inches long and about maybe 7 or 8 inches wide. The only problem is there was about 16 inches of snow, and it had snowed again about an inch on top of that. So when I went down to look to see toe impressions or anything like that, I really couldn't see anything. But it hooked around. There's probably 100 of them that I could see. It kind of shadowed the trail. There's a trail on top of this peak, and it kind of shadowed it in the same direction, but far enough away from the trail so that if you were on that trail, you couldn't see it. But I found that pretty fascinating too, man, because they were spaced out. The stride was between 5 and 6.5 feet, and they were in line just like people reported them. And they headed up. I really wanted to follow them, but there's some brush, and you get caught, your snowshoes caught in brush, and that's a scary feeling. Like, if there's some kind of animal like that around, I was definitely not following them either way.
I think at this point, Stone and Prime, I think maybe we need to be a little bit more clear of what we think Sasquatch really is, because I think a lot of people just listening so far in our opening thing actually think that we really believe there's some creature ape man living in the woods. And I keep trying to tell people, hang in there, we're going to get into the more depth part of it.
Well, I go back and forth whether or not they could be Nephilim or not. I've gone back and forth a lot with that. I don't think they necessarily have to be. They kind of fit the description and the bill in some ways, but people, what I think is there's a thing in the Bigfoot community called the woo factor. And the woo factor is some people, which is only like 5 or 10%, if that, of people who are into this subject, say that they think that they can dematerialize and that they can go into portals, they can turn into orbs and stuff like that. And I don't really see, I think a lot of that is accredited to when people have an experience and they maybe see something and it gets down on all fours or low to the ground behind something and they go to look, or it just seems like disappear. I think that people kind of accredit it to that, where that it's really what it is. It's such a powerful creature and so in tune with nature that it can travel and get down and do a spider crawl, and another one behind you can maybe distract you with a sound. And that thing seems like it disappeared, but I think a lot of the supernatural aspect has to do with the way they walk. People have described them as floating, like a human being bobs up and down when they walk, some more, some less. But a lot of these things, if they're seen from the waist up or whatever, they look like they're gliding, like they're really literally skiing on cross-country skis, to where their head movement is so smooth that people think, oh my man, it was floating through the forest. It looked like it just floated away. And I think that's just the morphology of how they move, because they have to be different. Something about them has to be different, especially with the hips, to walk in line like that, as opposed to 1 foot to the left, 1 foot to the right. So I think some of that is just the fact that it's something that you've never seen and you don't know how they move and how they behave. And the fact that they're very intelligent is why they can evade us. I put it like this, like, all right, here's your mission. There's 4 special forces dudes on top of that mountain. They're trained, they're SEAL Team 6 or whatever, right? They're up there and you're a hunter or you're a tracker, they have night vision. They're highly trained. Here's your job. Go find them and take a picture of them. Oh, by the way, they don't want to be found. So you go up there. Are you going to find these guys? And these are human beings. Probably not, man. Probably not. You're probably going to walk right past them. They're going to see you. You don't see them. And that's just a highly trained, in shape human being. These things don't need night vision or equipment. And they're so in tune with nature that, and, they know about us. They know more about us than we know about them. They know to avoid us, So I think a lot of that, like, gee, like, why don't we find one? How could we never find one? Why are there no good pictures and their dead body? Well, they might bury their dead. They might eat their dead. Bones don't really last forever outside, like you would think. I think there's a lot of more natural explanations that speaks to their intelligence, that, it's not just a dumb animal that's going to chase a bunny across the highway and get hit by a truck, So I think
Right.
if that
I think
explains.
from what I gather that like you're kind of like still tossed between what it actually could be or not be. And this is what I love about this stream, because I gotta be honest with you, when I first was looking into this and looking into a lot of this, and my thoughts and possibly your thoughts or in Prime thoughts and anybody else's thoughts that might be in the chat room, is that, you know what? I'm hoping at the end of the stream that we all learn something from this, because I think this is very in depth,
Sure, man.
And I just want to point out, Craig, I see your comments. Are you not seeing mine? We are going to get into all of these things. Calm down, brother. Take a step down, brother. This is not all going to happen in one night. Take a chill pill. We're going to get there.
Is that Craig Gaddis?
Calm down. Bring it down a little bit. So,
what's up, bro? How's it going, man?
Prime, let everybody know what your thoughts are of what Sasquatch is.
Well, my thoughts are, it's just like everything in this in that you look into, whether it be Tartaria, mud flood, Mandela, flat Earth, whatever. It's myself. I'm just trying to figure it out. I'm trying to see what it is. I've never seen one. I've never encountered one. I have no clue. But I'm at least explore and look into this with, an open mind to see what they're talking about, whether they're telling me the truth or not. I mean, we really don't know. But I just find it funny how certain things, when you bring up certain subjects, some people just automatically go into that, well, no, that can't be true, or that's not right, when you don't know. No one knows. And yes, I know they haven't found anything. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it, just like everybody else would, if they look into it. That's where I'm at with it, man, all the way around. I'm just the type of guy that I want to learn more and I want to know more about it. Because why are people talking about these encounters? I mean, my own mother has said she's heard, noises, talking going on, very high pitched. I sent her some of the things I've run across on YouTube as far as vocals and sent it to her. And she's going to come back and said, that's exactly what it sounded like. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know. So all I'm doing is exploring what it could be. What's the possibility of it? Is it real? Is it not real? Don't know. But, it's like anything else out there in the world, man. Ghosts, demons, you name it. You know what I'm saying? It's the same thing that I'm just trying to explore and see what's happening. Why are we seeing this thing? And what does it mean?
All right. So I guess I'll go into what I think it is. As I stated before, I used to watch all the shows, all the Bigfoot hunting shows, always into it. And then I watched all the ghost hunter shows and everything. Well, now I'm putting it all together. All right, look, there's no way there can be this many people that have witnessed this throughout time that goes way back. This is not just in our timeline, or we're talking way back. Okay. And it's the same type of stories over and over. And there's always hoaxes in there and bullshit and fake pictures and all these questions we have. My thought of what it is, Sasquatch is, to me, is no different than what aliens are. That's why I named it Bigfoot and Alien. I think that it's more likely that Sasquatch is more connected to aliens, meaning, believe me, I don't believe in aliens. I don't believe, I believe that they're demonic beings. That's what I think Bigfoot is. It's another demonic being. And throughout this series, I'll show some evidence as why I think that, what it is, and dating back all the way back to the names of it before the Bigfoot name. I think it's another, and you brought it up, Stone, with the it being able to appear and disappear. There's also orbs around the area. I mean, a lot of similarities, more similarities with the paranormal area of things than some stupid beast. And I also agree with Salted Cedar. It has a lot to do with, just like the alien deception is going to come through, but then there's the evolution side of it, that it's just some Neanderthal man that hadn't made his way to be a man like we are today. So I think it all ties together, and it's demonic, and it does everything to, if you look at any Bigfoot researchers, the last thing that they want to know is this thing is demonic. They want it to be a, a missing link in the evolution, and so forth. Why are there no bodies found? Well, why? Because it doesn't die, because it's an entity. Why there's no dead aliens? Yeah, we know people have seen that all the time, right? Where's the dead alien? Oh, in Area 51? Right, bullshit. So I think this is kind of where I'm going at with this. And we might not all agree. But it's going to be a learning curve, because I think it's that in depth. And the research I've done on it, and I'm sure that Stone has done it, and obviously Prime has done on it, is that I think through all this, that we're going to be able to tie this together and get some better understanding of it. Do I think there is some creature in the woods that can elude mankind for all this time as just a big animal? No, I don't. I really don't. Do I think it's real and that people have really come across it, experienced it? Absolutely. Just like people have with aliens. But what is an alien? It's no different than like people encountering ghosts, and they think they're ghosts. They think that they're dead uncle, but we know they're not their dead uncle. It all ties together. And I think this is where I'm going at with this stream, and eventually getting into more depth of what really is Bigfoot. It's just, it's the wild man. The wild man's been around forever, just like aliens. So this is where I'm tying it all in together, where I'm looking at this stream going, and this show, in this series, and whether, it's accurate or not, but it really brings insight into more of insight of what they really could be, because it's prominent and so prominent with so many experiences that are so similar, really, you can't ignore it and say it doesn't exist. That would be ignorance, in my opinion. Straight out ignorance. That it's fake and everybody's lying throughout history to where they even like pound that damn crap into a rock with a chisel when that's the only way they can, record history. So no. Right? So that's where I'm kind of, I don't know what your guys' thoughts on that is. Speak freely.
What do you think, Kryptonian? I'll let you take that.
Well, my thing is too is I'm even questioning why they're pushing it today, even more so. I mean, you look at like Star Wars, Chewbacca, a whole race that that whole entire character looks like one. You got Jack Link's beef jerky they use to feed the Sasquatch. Harry and the Hendersons, you name it, dude. There's tons of all these types of discussions about it that they're just pushing out there in front of the masses. And I question is why? Like everything. Why are you doing it? What's the purpose? If it's something that is completely made up and hoaxed, then fine. I get it, but I just don't see why it's so prevalent today, like with everything else. So I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. And yeah, as far as being recorded in history. Now, when you mentioned as far as, when I sent you that documentary to check out, that guy actually discredits evolution. He discredits the fact that we've evolved from apes. He's saying that, no, we didn't. He's saying that basically all the fossil records that the scientists are showing us are actually descendants of this creature. And
right.
then he ties in the whole Anunnaki into how he feels that that's more of, basically an ancient Sumera, and that's basically where the history of us came from. That's where he's postulating from. But I mean, he flat out turns around and says Darwin was a peckerwood, and anyone that believes in evolution is also a peckerwood. So, it was very interesting to at least listen to and check out his evidence and go from there to see what he thought. And, again, it's the same thing. Yeah, I don't know what they are, dude. I know that I've heard that Bigfoots are tied into a lot of alien encounters too, that, wherever they're usually seen, people have also recorded or come forward and said they saw alien crafts. And like Stone said earlier, or they just seem to like all of a sudden be able to go out, slide out of dimensions, which does tie into what you feel. Personally, like I said, I don't know, man. I'm trying to get to the bottom of it.
Let's put it this way. Let's look at the Mandela effect, right? Let's put that out there, right? And how many people that have witnessed the Mandela effect? How many people? Right? And then if you came across somebody that might not have seen the Mandela effect or go against it, what are your thoughts? Like, oh, you just don't see it. You don't understand. Let me help you. So when I always get confused when we go down a different rabbit hole other than the Mandela effect, why it is that they sound like the people that are outside the Mandela effect community, and instead of listening, like, how many people have experienced Sasquatch and for how long?
Exactly.
Much longer than the Mandela effect. Much longer. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it just comes from people not being into that subject. Like I was talking to somebody recently. I just brought it up, and they're like, after I was done discussing my thoughts on Bigfoot, they were like, "What do you mean? There's more than just one?" A lot of people think that all these people are just seeing one Bigfoot, and I saw the Bigfoot. Where
great thing, because I did some research on this and I couldn't believe how many there different were. Let me see if I can find it.
There are 4.
Well, there's like I don't know. I want to say like 8.
Some people say there's 4 types. Some people say 5 or 6. There's the patty type, from what I understand, which was in the Patterson Gimlin film. Um, the the wood booger that modern people call it further south. That looks like they're a little more aggressive. They look like a chimpanzee in the face. See, the reason people aren't seeing bears and misidentifying them is that bears don't walk upright. Bears can't travel or run 40 miles an hour. Bears don't have opposable thumbs. They can't throw rocks at you. And a lot of these people, as far as where the pictures go, and I saw Craig mention, where's all the good pictures? Well, there's a quite a few out there. I would recommend the Patterson Gimlin film. I would recommend Independence Day footage
Here's
on
one
YouTube.
interesting too.
Which one is that?
I'll show it to you. This one, definitely not a bear. This is. Let me share my screen.
Right, Miss Honey Anamaya, the skunk ape down in Florida. Yep, longer hair. There's more reports of them stinking really bad than the average Sasquatch. They're a little smaller. They're supposed to be down in Florida and in the Gulf Coast area. I mean, they look different in different areas. From what a lot of these encounters that people say, they have reports, 6 feet tall, 7 feet tall, 10, 12 feet tall. And as far as the 10, 12 feet tall ones, there's a natural precedent, I think, in that Gigantopithecus blackie, that the jawbones were found in China, India, Vietnam. It was the largest primate that ever lived, 10 feet tall, 1,300 pounds. This was a real animal. I think they're still with us today. I lean more towards the animal idea than anything else, but there could be another type that is possibly Nephilim, and there could be a type that's an animal. Homo heidelbergensis was supposedly 350,000 years ago to 800,000 years ago. Is what they say. And I heard something, I couldn't find it, but I had heard that recently they said that they found a tooth or a jawbone of a Homo heidelbergensis that was dated to only be 10,000 years ago. And that's right around the corner. So if people are still seeing these things, it could be Homo heidelbergensis, it could be Gigantopithecus blackie that still exists,
I don't know. Were you able to see that last picture I posted there?
I think I missed it or I didn't see it. Oh wait, I'm actually paused, so hold on a second.
And then the wild man. I think the wild man has a lot to do with it. I don't know if you listen to the wild man much, you guys, and the history behind the wild man and what he looks like. Also with the green man as well. And I think that all ties together, in my opinion. I lean way more towards that it's a demonic entity than a beast that can hide as much as it does. Animal. That's where I lean towards. That's where my philosophy with it, just like the aliens, I think it promotes evolution. And I think they're going to use this, just like the alien deception at some point. Even, scientists, I mean, they're starting to get into, if you read recent articles on it, they're starting to get into, like, we're going to look into this. We're going to do, all the DNA on this and find out what it is. And to me, it's just more deception down the road that goes against, the word of God. It could be So all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is our missing ancestor link, you know?
Right, man. Yeah, I've thought of that too. Like, maybe they're waiting to roll it out as a missing link, and most of the world will go for that. Like there is a big cover up, um, and a lot of people have dealt with these people from the government. A lot of these Bigfoot researchers have dealt with them, and people that have had encounters have had the man in the suit and the biker. I've heard that reported a lot of the time, where it's a guy from the government in a suit, and with him, they're playing good cop, bad cop. Standing next to him is a plainclothes guy that's dressed as a biker, that's big and intimidating. And they pretty much, roundabout way, they kind of threaten you to say that you saw a bear. And it's not just any encounter that, it's an encounter that where maybe somebody got injured, ended up in the hospital, and there's a paper trail, or somebody that's trying to talk to the media or something, a well-documented account. Then these guys will show up and they'll pretty much threaten your livelihood, to keep it under wraps.
Right.
And we could get to that missing people thing in a couple minutes too, man, because I know we were talking about that a little bit.
Oh, I
But
know.
I think
Oh,
that,
seriously, go into that. Because I know we're talking about that, and I was like, I think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, yeah, go into the whole missing people and I'm
yeah,
sorry, Prime. Anytime you want to chime in, brother. I mean, anytime.
Oh no, you guys go ahead, man. Jump into the missing people thing because I didn't touch that part of that yet.
well, let me rattle that off. It's like, a lot of this has been on Coast to Coast, and a lot of you guys might be familiar with it. 411, missing people, and this guy called David Paulides, Paulides. David Paulides is an ex-police detective, and he's working on like his fourth or fifth book right now, Missing 411, they're called. And the map of the national park systems in the United States overlays perfectly with the maps of clusters of missing people. And he goes around and talks about it. He has a lot of the family members that are distraught because their loved one is missing, looking towards him for answers and stuff. And he talks about Bigfoot. He talks about the fact that when some of these people go missing in weird circumstances around national parks, the dogs won't track whatever they find as far as the scent. They just lay down professional tracking dogs, and they won't track it. And that's probably an instinctual thing that they do that. But he also talks about there's a rescue mission or a search and rescue mission that the National Parks institutes to try to find somebody, and they put on a big show for a couple of days. But then at the same time, there's a military operation with special forces guys that go, and they don't work with the regular rescuers. They go off on their own to look for some either dead body of the missing person, or whatever they're looking for. Nobody knows because they don't tell anybody anything. But I think these guys know what they're looking for, and they probably go and maybe take them out or something. I don't know, but it's pretty fascinating how that missing map overlays perfectly with the national park systems of these people and kids, and seemingly like healthy people that just totally disappear. And I think that a lot of the time that they might be just like people. You might come across, for the most part, ones that just don't want you around or don't want to even show themselves to you. And then sometimes you'll get one that will stalk you and kill you and eat you, and nobody knows because you just go missing. They don't find anything. They don't find any trace of you. So, but, my thoughts on this dude is that, like anything, he could be possible gatekeeper to where everybody's looking towards him now as the go-to guy. If they have information, they lay it out to him, and he actually works for the national park system and is a part of the cover-up. you know. But I think that there's such an interest now in Sasquatch. There's so many people offline that are looking for them, that are trying to get audio, video, or a dead body by committed to killing one, that the government has to eventually come out with their version of the story like they do with anything. They like to get their version out first. So I think if you ever see this thing captured and brought into the mainstream or killed and proven, the researcher or whoever is claiming to be whatever that gets that title of being the person to expose and find real solid evidence is going to actually be a gatekeeper too, because they could twist that around to the fact that, you know, or not the fact, but they could twist that around to say that it's the missing link. And then that supports the system of deception that we're all in, that leads back to the government. And, you know, it might not be true. They might get their own version out and say, oh, you know, there's only 200 of them. They're the missing link between apes and human beings, and people will just be fascinated by it. They'll believe it and they'll go for it. Except a lot of Sasquatch researchers will probably be like, wow, this is BS. But those voices are going to be covered up, because you're going to, you know, if you see one on TV, that's where you're going for that information, you know. So that's my thoughts on that. I'm going to clam up for a while and jump into the chat. Get myself a banana.
Well, Cowboy, what do you think, though? Cowboy? Okay.
He's been taken, man. They got him. The man in the suit. The man in the suit and the bunker.
He snuck in and stole him out, man. But while he was in the middle of the broadcast, they kidnapped him. You know, I heard about those too, man. I heard about those books and on the coast to coast as well, as far as those missing, you know, about kids being found on a mountainside and, you know, missing their clothes and everything else. And, you know, it's interesting to find out the amount of people that go missing in national parks and in wooded areas, and, you know, finding them, you know, 60, 70 miles away from where they originally were.
Right, like a little 2-year-old kid or something found miles and miles away up on a mountain.
Yeah, it's crazy how much of it just doesn't get broadcast on mainstream media. You know, that it does seem hush hush.
I'm back. Sorry, guys. Why do I always like try to leave when I'm not going to be noticed leaving and I get caught?
See, we thought maybe that you got snatched up by Sasquatch, bro. That they came in and took you out.
Sorry, everybody. I'm sorry.
We were wondering here though, because like I said, I've heard of those stories too, man. I ran across those a while back, way before I got into Mandela, about missing people in the national parks and how that's even kind of covered up, how it's not brought out into the mainstream media. You know, like I was telling Stone, there was I heard about a kid that they found on the side of a mountain completely with no clothes on, or there's other kids with no shoes, and they're like 70 miles away from where they were originally became missing. And, you know, there are areas that just can't be explained. You know, it's like there's no way that the kid would have got there on its own. I never heard, you know, I've always wondered if people have always been told to be quiet, just like, you know, the Men in Black show up for the aliens or anything else for that matter. You know, man, it's one of those things that as long as it's been documented in history and all the accounts of it, why, you know, for me, when I hear that everything's a myth, you know, well, is it a myth because it was passed down over time, or is there some truth behind it? like I said, my mom told me one night she was up in the middle of the night. She stepped out back to have a cigarette, and she literally said there was two people. It sounded like two high pitched girls uh, speaking in a language that she couldn't understand, and it scared the crap out of her. Man, she like hurried up, threw a cigarette out, went inside, locked the door, didn't go out again. Other times they'd be out in their backyard and sitting there relaxing, by a fire, and then they'd hear all the wood knocks.
Right.
And where she lived at, right on the edge of, it was actually right inside the Ocala National Forest. And, I at least wonder about it because if you think about it, like, I don't know, myself, I noticed like when you fly at night, do you ever really look out and see out the window as far as how cities are set up? It's amazing how we kind of cluster together as people. You look at cities and you see them all these clusters of lights all together, and then it's blackness, and then there's light, and then there's blackness, and we don't go out and live out in the middle of nowhere. Not everybody. I know some people do, but it's hard. In order for us to live out in some of these remote areas, we knock down all the trees and make room for us to be there. Right. So for me, it does leave the question, well, could it possibly be? I don't know. But
well, let's look at some evidence on some of these sightings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Many reports of disappearing tracks, often seen as a line of tracks that suddenly disappears if the creature dematerialized in mid-stride. Right? Extreme fear shown by domestic animals when in close proximity of Bigfoot. And one of the stories is a bear tracker dog picked up on a scent and would not follow the trail. Eyewitness sightings of Sasquatch dematerializing in front of them. Right? Think about this. This is where I'm leading into where my view is. That they're different than the aliens. The same proximity of they are demonic. They are part of the Nephilim bloodline. And what I mean by that is that when the fallen angels came down, they did not just take women. They tampered with animals as well to try to destroy everything that God had said that he made that was good and alter their DNA. Mm-hmm. Also, here's another thing. This is where, I was talking to you, Stone, earlier about as well, is that many of the sightings, they've seen orbs in the vicinity of the area. Now, most Bigfooters, Sasquatch hunters, they're not paranormal people. Paranormal people are not Bigfoot hunters. Yet mm-hmm. the coincidences of what they see at the time are extremely similar. If you look at most tribes in both Australia and America, they think that they are part human and part demonic. If you look at Native Americans' history on that, Native American has been have talked about this for a long time and called it a creature that can go basically in layman terms through dimensions, in and out, come in, appear in front of them, disappear in front of them. They would come in and they would actually mate with some of the Native American tribe women and treat them very well. Have you ever heard? Here's the other thing. Have you ever heard of a Sasquatch hurting somebody? No, they haven't. To me, they are very much like aliens. They're demonic. They're very demonic. They're a different whatever strand of Nephilim bloodline they are, and have the ability to do what the Nephilim bloodline are able to do in that type of situation. Just like aliens, they all look like gray people or whatever. But those are just what? Those are just to me no different than Sasquatch. Is their form that they take in presence of us. And if we look at Sasquatch, we want to think of him as a big dumb ape, yet there can no evidence of it, no evidence of why we don't see their bones, why we don't see them dead, why none of them been hit by a car, why are they here and the next minute they're gone? Why is every testimony of a Bigfoot is the second they see them is the same second that they're gone? To me, I mean, all of this, let me see what else I got here. Just all of this, and if you look at the just scriptural, I mean, even in the book of Enoch, it talks about being cast out and into put into the woods and grown hair and cast from society. Even in the book of Enoch, it's there. So to me, it's demonic. To me, it's too many people have seen it. Too many people have witnessed it. And there is not enough there for us to sit there and say, oh, well, here's an alien. Here's a Bigfoot. Yeah, it all strives together with the same storyline, the same testimonies, and so forth. So I think that, to me, that's where I go with it. I really, really, truly believe, in my opinion, that it is demonic. I really do. I think it's real, no different than any spiritual deity that tries to act like your Uncle John that's a ghost, or an alien that acts like it's some species from another planet, or anything. I think it is demonic. And I think it's another deception used by Satan over all this time, all the way back as far, as you can think of. This is not new. This is as old as it comes when it comes to demonic entities, as a creature that they've seen and described the same way as people describe today. Mm-hmm. Therefore, is it real? In my opinion, absolutely. But what is it, in my opinion? It's demonic. It's a demonic creature. And what's the purpose of it? I don't know. The only thing I can think of is leading to more people believing that it's into the deception of the evolution that we became from primates as a lost species. And look at the giants. Look at the deception that the Smithsonian does with the giants. As soon as somebody finds it, the skeletons of that, it disappears. Look at the stories of all the people that have testimonies. The only thing testimonies are promoted is when they can prove it as a hoax. And when it can't be proved a hoax and there's no explanation, then what? Then it's not really a story, right? But boy, they're going to promote, anything else they can. We've got, the picture that Stan was talking about, the one they can't disprove. How many of those are out there of pictures of demonic entities and filming, even Stone or Scarab did a thing on this stream showing, you know, the video camera, the demon activating. I've done paranormal experiences before in lockdowns, and so this to me, it's all linked together, and it's demonic. And in Israel, it's not a fantasy. It's been around too long, too many testimonies, too many eyewitnesses, and with that comes 10 times more false testimonies and encounters with it, whether it's on purpose or whether by the person for their own name, or whether it's government tampering with it, just like they do with the aliens things. Now, you think about this. I mean, think about the alien thing, for God's sakes, when, boy, if you thought they were really aliens, you're a nutbag, right? But now all of a sudden we got the Pope talking about he's going to baptize them, and yeah, it's okay to believe in that. So, I mean, now you're seeing a bigger push with the Sasquatch, right? And everything on that. And so to me, it is there. And yes, they are gonna portray it, these, the aliens, where they're portrayed as like a higher being that with alien deception, they're gonna be the ones that created us. So they're all knowing, and they're so smart. Yet when it comes to the Bigfoot theory, right, we have to dumb it down because it has to be the Neanderthal part, the missing link. So they have to be kind of stupid and just running through the woods and banging on trees and throwing rocks. And so they go with that route with it. But in all actuality, they're very intelligent, because you only get a glimpse of them, and you can't track them, and you can't really film them, and you can't really get any tangible evidence of it. And it's just they're just as intelligent as the deception of the aliens that they throw upon us. This is where I go with it. I know that's kind of like maybe off track of maybe what you guys think or not. That's where I'm at. That's where I see it.
No, I can see that, man. I mean, I think that there's a lot more evidence of Sasquatch than aliens, because there's actually a lot of people that have collected, hundreds of people that have collected hair samples, and it always comes back as unknown hominid, because there's nothing to compare it to. So a lot of researchers know that, and they don't even bother anymore, because that's $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 for a accredited lab to do a DNA test on something. So they know that there's been a lot of hair samples that have been taken, and it always comes back as unknown hominid. And the trackway evidence, the feet aren't just larger human feet. They're narrower towards the heel. And there's something called a mid-tarsal break. So right in the middle of your foot. In other words, there's an extra joint there, to where if they have to get down on all fours, they don't have to stretch out that Achilles tendon, because their foot will bend up in the middle at a 90-degree angle to get down on all fours, or it'll wrap around the other way like a monkey foot, around a branch or a tree or something like that. So, but I don't know, man. I mean, I've been on the fence, maybe they're descendants of Cain, and they are animalistic physical creatures that have kept themselves hidden. Maybe when the veil finally lifts, maybe they won't be hiding anymore. But, as far as like it being an animal, if you saw a gorilla before the late 1800s, people didn't believe you, because it wasn't a known animal until that time. Or if you saw a one of those black and white bears, panda bears, before, I think it was I think it was maybe the 1900s even.
Yeah.
People thought it was a myth, because they lived deep in the forest. Not too many people saw them. You saw one, people just didn't believe you, Well, you saw a black and white bear that only eats bamboo. We don't have anything like that. you know, so it didn't exist yet. And I don't know, man. I mean, I've been kind of on the fence with that, back and forth. Like, the one thing that makes a case for them to be demonic in nature is a lot of people are interested in it now. And what are they doing? They're giving their time, they're giving their sovereigns to this thing, to where, they're being distracted from other truths, maybe. I don't know. It's a tough call. There might be some that are demonic, and maybe that some that are leftover hominoids or hominids or something, you know. But a lot of those trackways that you were talking about, Cowboy, that disappear.
Yeah.
I've heard the explanation that because they're so intelligent, they know enough to backtrack in their tracks and throw you off. Like, you don't expect something to be able to jump like 25, 30 feet. And there has been some people that actually have followed trackways and thought that it disappeared. And then they go up on a bluff or a little cliff or something, and they picked it up again. They just didn't, they assumed that the animal couldn't jump that high or that wide or something, and it seemed to disappear. But I think they could be smart enough to backtrack in snow, let's say, because those tracks stay around longer, even when they don't think they're being followed. Because if they're going back to their area to sleep, from some people that claim they have day watchers, one of the juveniles will stay up during the day and keep an eye on a deep wooded area or on top of a mountain or in a cave type area where the other ones are sleeping, and he'll be able to alert the other ones if there's people that come up that way.
Okay, but here's the thing with that is the whole why I keep going back to is demonic. The sleeping area. Okay, but of everything that we've known about Sasquatch, has anybody found a den where they sleep? I've never seen one.
I've never heard about like a cave or anything like that, but I've heard of people finding bedded down areas. And there's a lot of tree structures that have been found in the woods where, there'll be two pine trees that are broken off and they're not even touching the ground, and it's in an X shape, which could maybe alert other Sasquatch that, look, don't come here. This is our area. And it's a tree that's not from that area, and it doesn't have, it's broken off. It doesn't have like a root ball connected to it where it just kind of fell over. So there's tree structures are a big piece of evidence, I think. I even found a tree twist once, which is associated with Sasquatch, where this tree was a living tree. It had a diameter of about 6 inches, and it was broken by being twisted around 380 degrees. And, if anybody's done any woodworking, when you break fresh wood, it splinters a lot. It's not like an old rotten log. You break it and it just breaks. If it's fresh, it's alive, it splinters. And then those splinters, it dries out and the splinters are there for years. And that's another commonality is a tree twist, where the tree is twisted and pointed down towards the ground. And the tree is not really big enough to support that much snow where you could say, well, there's a lot of snow that got on it and it was a snow load and it just broke. Well, trees break, but living trees don't really twist like in a 360 degrees like that and are pointed in a certain direction. It could be a marker for them or something like that. And I found something like that once, and that's another. Tree structures and tree twists and stuff, I think, are another compelling thing, because you need thumbs. You need opposable thumbs to be able to do that. And even a strong guy can't really twist a branch that even has a 1 inch diameter that's alive and totally destroy it by twisting it. It takes a lot. Mm-hmm. And it could be a sign to say, like, hey, I'm this big. maybe it's a sign to other Sasquatch, like, don't come around here because I can twist a tree this big. And well, you can only twist a tree that big. So I don't know, man. I go back and forth on that.
I'm going to present something here. We'll get into the wild man because I think the wild man has a lot to do with this. And so let me know when you guys can see it.
I can see it.
All right, so we got the wild man of the woods. Right? And it shows up in artwork in literature of medieval Europe. It goes way back, right? It also, when you look at the artwork at the cathedral, Canterbury Cathedral, it has it there. It goes way back. This is, here we're talking 16th century, this is not, so when I look at this, and this is something that's been around for a very long time. It's not some just creature in the woods, in my opinion. This is something that, I don't know. Can you see where I hit the cathedral on this?
Yep.
Okay. And then if we go to, let's see. So this is part of it, right? And they have it, the bolts, right? This is something that goes way back, right? And we know about the Green Man. We know the Green Man is demonic, right? We've talked about the Green Man before. So this is something that goes way, way back. This is not something new under the sun. Here, look at this picture here. I mean, this is old. These are old pictures, right? This has been around for since history, since beginning. So therefore, it's not just some smart, intelligent creature that through all this time has been fighting people or hiding in the woods. This is a demonic creature. This is something more than just some ape man hiding in the woods. There's too much witnesses, too much history behind this thing, more so than even the aliens. I mean, we're all on board with alien deception. Yet the Bigfoot thing becomes this thing where it's like, what is it? Yet the Bigfoot information has been around much longer than the alien deception. We even have it here in the book of Daniel, right? Of casting them out, right? To, where was it? Where God sent them into, I can't say this name here, right? The king of Babylon sent them into the woods, right? To live like a beast, and he grew hair, right? And so forth. So this goes all the way back to biblical times. This thing that we call Bigfoot and Sasquatch, that the Native Americans call the wild man, this goes way back, man. This thing has been around forever. That to me tells me that it is not a missing link. It is demonic. In what form? How? Well, I'm not 100% sure, but definitely, I mean, just picture alone, I mean, tall, look how tall he is, full of hair, And the other thing I want to say too is that, they might get to the point where, if you notice, a lot of times they grab samples and it comes back to bear. And well, who's to say they're not wrapping themselves in a bear coat or something at some point, not to leave to cover their DNA portion that could be left behind. Who's to say? And the other thing too about this that I read into is that a lot of the eyewitnesses that have encountered them had talked about sulfur, the smell of sulfur. Sulfur is also very prominent when it comes to demonic ghosts. Same smell. So another tie-in to this. This is where I go with this. This is where I go into why I think that it's demonic. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I definitely see your point, 100%. And like I said, I don't know, man. For me, it's just odd that it has been around for so long. Now, whether it's demonic, Nephilim, maybe they're even remnants of giants of the old. I don't know. Like I said, when I was in my research, it was just finding out, like they were saying about the one guy that I was listening to. He was just pretty much trying to point out how they could possibly be even descendants of Cro-Magnon man. Now, like I said, I didn't run across anything as far as the sulfur yet. You mentioned that they're just hiding. I'd have to correct you a little bit because I have run across accounts of them actually hurting people.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of those.
I heard.
Share those? Go ahead, share those. I mean, that's interesting. I haven't, so I'm listening.
There was hikers that were walking in. They actually found another hiker that was actually ripped into pieces and were sitting in the trees.
Yeah, I've heard a pretty recent one about on this guy on YouTube, Thinker Thunker. He doesn't really post much, but he breaks down a lot of videos and has some pretty amazing videos. For anyone who doesn't think there's any compelling videos, I just think you haven't seen a lot of them because
pull it up.
Yeah, this guy Thinker Thunker, and this guy got it. He's on YouTube. Yep.
Thinker Thunker.
Thinker Thunker. Yep.
On one word or space?
I think there's a space between the words. Yeah. Yep. And only a few months ago, there was this dude that got attacked. He came out and said he got attacked. You could see the bruises and stuff on his face by something that came up behind him and knocked him down to the ground from behind and above. And the state park system, whatever state it was in, said it was a cougar attack.
Do you know the name of his video? I'm on his channel.
That particular video, I'm not sure, but I think
Bigfoot? Is it New Man Attacked by Bigfoot?
That's probably it, because I think that might be the only one he has on his channel. And there's a few good, that's a decent story, but there's a few good pieces of video that he goes through and kind of points out how it couldn't possibly be a human being in a suit or something like that. There's this one that this thing in the tree line throws a tree, pretty much, not even a branch, but a whole tree, like 30 feet. And you're thinking, well, gee, like a person couldn't even do that. A bear certainly couldn't throw a tree. You see its arm, and some pretty compelling stuff, man, on that. But yeah,
that's what I'm getting into. Like, bears are not going to throw rocks. Bears are not going to knock on trees. Bears aren't going to, the evidence that they have with sound, right, of the howling and the sounds they make, right? And so
Sure.
I 100% believe that there is something um, that we know as Sasquatch that is extremely real, 100%. Absolutely. Um, but again, my opinion is it's demonic. That's my opinion. And I don't think it's an animal that's very in tune to being able to conceal itself from humanity throughout this whole time from the beginning of time. This goes way back, you know.
Yeah, man.
Um,
I mean, every Native American tribe has,
every single
their
one,
story. Yeah.
every single one, yeah.
And they're different in different areas too. Some of them say, hey, they're gentle forest creatures, guardians of the forest. Some of them in a different state or different area will say, stay away from these things. They'll really kill you. They'll take your women every once in a while. And just in some different areas, they might just behave differently, or they all have individual personalities and kind of either do what they want. They either stay away from us, they take us every once in a while, which speaks to that missing person thing, the whole 411 cover up thing. But yeah, man, I mean, my main question is you know, did God create Sasquatch?
Yeah, and that's where I go. God didn't create Sasquatch. God created, and the fallen angels, um, they through procreating created things that God did not create. And that was their goal because we know that Satan was able to stand right next to God and he saw God create, and God's rule was to him is that the one thing you can't do is create. But what he did do was tamper with what God had created. And through that, that's where we get the Nephilim bloodline and the Nephilims and the all the other forms of evilness out there. Is that they tampered with it? We know, I mean, scripturally that they came down and they tampered not just with humans, but with all animals. Right? I think they tampered with animals. They um, everything they could do, and so from that became what something God did not create.
So what I wonder is that, are they, if they're, let's say they're descendants of the original Nephilim, you know, do they, can they get salvation if that's
No
the case?
Nephilim. That's the thing. No, zero Nephilims can get salvation. Um, the fallen angels went back to God and they asked God, I understand we're screwed, basically. Right? Layman terms. But please, God, save our children. Save our children. Give them the opportunity to be saved. And God looked at them and said, no, you did not listen to me. You will watch them die. They will never enter the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven. Never. And this is why the
So my,
Nephilim bloodline do everything they can to prolong and do everything they can, because once they die, they don't enter, they never can enter heaven, right? They can go in and out the dimensions, but the Nephilim, the dead Nephilim bloodline, you know, can go in and out, but they cannot reach heaven. And this is why they're trying to create different avenues and vessels for them to live longer with the AIs now. I mean, we're getting another whole subject here, but no. To answer your question, in my belief, in my opinion, no Nephilim bloodline can ever enter heaven. That's my opinion.
well, what if they, what if they don't know what they are? Like they're literally descendants of Nephilim, but at this point, they don't know what they are.
Okay, that's not going to happen because uh, the Nephilim bloodline, they keep their bloodline strong. They're the ones that rule the world. They're the ones in power in England, and they're the ones that are presidents. They're the ones that are in power. They're the ones that they're given all the power they need. They're the ones that only look at the say Freemasons, right? Look at Freemasons, like secret society. Well, guess what? That's not the Nephilim bloodline, but within that is a skull and bones, right? Mm-hmm. Only the Nephilim bloodline can enter the skull and bones. Through that, they are given whatever they want. That they're given all the power they want. They're in control throughout this whole world. The Nephilim bloodline is controlling our world. We are under their domain, Satan's domain, and they're given everything. And they are aware that they cannot go to heaven. And this is why they do everything they can, directed by Satan, their God, to do everything they can to try to get out of what God's destruction is of hell. Right? And this is where the AIs come in. This is where the cloning comes in. Everything they're doing is to get out of this, to prolong their life through not going to hell and staying in our dimension and living on. This is, in my opinion, their avenue. And so the Nephilim bloodline are the rulers of this world, and they keep it within themselves, that only promote within the bloodline. If you're not part of the bloodline, no, you're not going to be part of the elite. You're not going to be a ruler. You're not going to be a controller. You're not going to have, it's been this way forever, since the beginning of time. It's the same bloodline controlling the Nephilim bloodline, controlling. And they do everything they can to keep the bloodline true and not bring in other bloodlines. That's why if you look at all the way back in history with the kings and queens, right? They married within their own bloodline, kept the bloodline pure. And it's to this day they do that. And the king and queen never died. We still have a king and queen. That king and queen rules over the whole world. They don't just roll over England. They rule the whole world. We still have the Vatican, the church connected to the king and queen that rules over all religions. We still have that in place. Nothing has changed. The concept of the reality of it has changed. But the reality is, Rome never died. We're still right here. We're still living the way that it's always been. Well, we kind of got off topic here, but that's my opinion. I know I go deep rabbit holes. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what makes me think it could be what you're saying is it's certainly an abomination of the human form if they came down here to mate with primates or something, to create something that God didn't create. They could have been setting it up because they go on from centuries to century, where we have short lives. They could be setting it up to be a possible missing link in the future to back Darwinism, which is pretty much goes against God. But on the other hand, there are ones that are young that people see. There are juveniles and there are old ones with mange. So the idea that they're immortal, I'm not sure about that, because there are ones that are babies and pretty rarely seen small ones that are with the bigger ones. And there's ones that are juveniles. There's ones that are witness that are full grown, 8, 9 feet. And there's ones that are look pretty scraggly and mangy that are kind of on their own.
If you look at that, and the true deception was the missing link, would you not need a mom, a dad, a baby? Right? Would you not need that? In order to satisfy the deception of it being the missing link, you would need a mom and dad and a baby. So do you think Satan's that stupid? You got to remember, what Satan has put in place today, Satan had already started planning from the beginning of time when he fell.
Right.
So that would be very understandable. Of course, they would have mom and dad and baby. Because if they didn't, we would then lose track of the fact that it's not the missing link. Right? So everything that we see today in the deception goes back to Satan's original plan from the beginning. This is his plan from the beginning. This is his world that we live in. God gave this world to him. We live in this world. This world is not of ours. We live in this cosmos world, and we fight every day against principalities. That's where we live. Therefore, yes, we're going to have aliens. We're going to have Bigfoot. We're going to have ghosts. And we're going to have all these distractions to lead away from the truth of God. Why would we not? Why would we not? Of course we're going to have that. Right? And so we look at that. All we could do is keep putting our trust in God and following God and being enlightened to this, and and exposing the lies that are put upon us, right? And that's what we do. This is why we're such a minority in this world, and that's even within the Bigfoot community, this more than anything, Stone. The last thing the Bigfoot community wants to hear is this thing is a Nephilim bloodline. They don't want to hear that.
Well, remember when I went that I got the link to that Bigfoot channel that time, and I brought that up. Like, I didn't know those guys. I just jumped into the chat. I was like, "Hey, send me a link," and they did. And I brought it up. The whole Nephilim conspiracy, and they took that video down. I noticed that was the only video I've seen them take down. And their idea of it was that they're animals, and they didn't really want to explore too much else. They didn't say that, but their channel seemed to be that way. So I put 2 and 2 together, like, as to why they took that stream down. I think it was what I was saying, and I was just an idea. I wasn't saying, well, this is what I believe. I was presenting that as an idea, and it seemed a little foreign to them or something. So they're not really that well-rounded, I think, as far as conspiracy guys or Bigfoot guys. But I'm pretty sure
the research I was doing was exactly that. That the Sasquatch hunters think. I got to remember the terms. Okay, so it was people that believe in paranormal are weird. People that believe in Sasquatch are crazy, and kind of in those terms. Yeah, the reality is the guy was saying we need to come together because there's too much evidence of connecting it. Instead of fighting against each other, we need to combine it. And there was another saying about people that believed in aliens. It was like a threefold on that. Where the guy was like, enough of that. When in reality, if you look at all three individually, they all have the same characteristics. And therefore, we need to look at that and come together as a group and look at that uh, as a group, that we all see the same things. So if you're a Sasquatch hunter and you notice an orb next to where the sighting of the Bigfoot is, you discount the paranormal fact, But in reality, it's like, why is there an orb there?
True, man. And this one guy on YouTube, Sasquatch Chronicles, does just encounter stories with people. And he's pretty much in the camp that it's an animal. But to be honest with his audience and himself, he does talk about orbs sometime, because there are a lot of people that he's spoken to that have seen orbs around them, and he can't ignore it. He doesn't want to just ignore that and say, well, it's my channel and I believe they're animals, and you guys with the orb thing is crazy. He's gotten so many encounters that, a certain percentage of his encounters, people describe seeing orbs around him. So he's honest enough to bring that into the mix and talk about that, even if that's going to be an unpopular video that he did or something, and a talk that he had with most of his audience. He brings it up anyway. So there are some people that take encounter stories. There are some researchers who step back and look at the big picture and are a little more open-minded about what it could be, But I would say a good percentage of them are in the camp that it's an animal,
Yeah,
and I'm in that camp because I want it to be known one day. I lean towards that because that's what I hope it is, only because it'd be fascinating if they were, you had some HD footage of one, or one was captured and it dodged its way around the government cover up where it was sent out to too many people and they couldn't do anything about it. But, I'll take in the information as I get it too, and think about it. I don't really subscribe to any particular camp because, like I said, I've gone back and forth with that. And, all I know is that I don't know. But the one thing I do know is there's something out there, because, I never laid eyes on one, but I've had about 4 experiences and encounters myself. I believe they were encounters because the commonality factor in all the other encounters that I've heard, and I kind of knew what to look for almost after I kept hearing people's different stories. I probably would have walked right past that tree twist or seen it and not thought anything of it if I hadn't already been a couple of years into hearing what people witness, and, tree twist being one of them. So, you can have a hunter out there that has a lot of experience in the woods, but if he doesn't know what to look for, totally doesn't believe in that at all, he's not going to think they're real,
Mm-hmm. This is, again, I just want to point out, Prime. This is I don't know what your thoughts are, but please feel free to speak anytime, man.
No, man. You guys are bringing up some very interesting points. Like I said, I've never had personal experiences with them. Like, my mother's told me about them, about her personal experiences, and then of course Stone's told me about his. Myself personally, I've never run across anything, remotely about it. And honestly, I thank God every day I don't, because I don't know how I'd react. I mean, my thought
Dude,
is,
if I ever actually saw one, like, that'd be a whole different ball game. Like, I'm pretty sure I was close to one, but I would definitely at least piss in my pants.
yeah, because I mean, my thought was, I'm not going to go tramps out there in the woods with a camera and try to find one, because I mean, really, this huge ass 10-foot hairy ass being, whatever, demon, whatever, come jumping out and landing there in front of me. The only pictures you're going to probably see that I'll be able to catch is me screaming and hollering as I'm running away from it.
Well, let's do this. Let's do this. Let's take it to the alien side now, because what I'd like to do is take it to the alien side now, and then I think I can wrap it back to the Bigfoot side. So, Prime, your
Yeah.
thoughts on what an alien is?
That, man, I'm on the fence. Part of me wants to believe it's demonic, and then the other part of me questions on, are they even real? Is it a false flag? Because of all the footage that everyone produces about, lights in the skies or crafts, and it just seems a lot today. And I remember back in the earlier part of like the 80s and that you'd hear these stories about it, but there'd be military would get involved. People would see military planes, and then you got the Men in Black or whatever they are, government officials showing up and shutting people up. Today, it just seems like they don't care. That's the part I've noticed about it, and I question some of the lights and what people think they're seeing in the sky, because obviously we're in a day and age now with drones. So there's times I've looked at it and said, is it really lights in the sky, or is it a damn drone? Someone's flying a drone somewhere, and is that what people are catching on film? Again, I've never run across I've never seen any type of weird thing in the sky. I look, um, you know, it's a finicky subject, because you hear these stories. You hear about Eisenhower having the secret meeting back in the '60s with supposedly all these different races of aliens. That there was a secret meeting where he disappeared for a little bit, and they claimed that he had a toothache, and he had to go see the dentist, the emergency. Obviously, the Roswell story in Area 51. There's the Paul Rosard, I think is his name, where he claims that he worked at Area 51 and did reverse engineering. Um, you know, it's a real fine line, because obviously you go into the same. It's no different than people say about us with the Mandela, that we're misremembering or you're crazy. You get a lot of bad stigma with it. And right now where I stood was, I was always into science fiction. So, you'd look up and look at the stars, and I used to wonder, is it really planets out there? Are we really alone in the universe or not? The demonic, that's a little new. I hadn't heard about that until more recent years, as far as they could possibly be demonic entities. They could be. Mm-hmm. I guess my question is, though, you hear stories like you said, where you've gone to lockdown and you hear where they get demonic presence, like shadow people and, the sulfur and all that. I guess I try to understand why they would present themselves like an alien being. That's where my question comes in. When they can just pretty much manifest, like in the Bible, and possess if they're allowed.
They do both. They do both. Huh? They do both.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's where I try to understand what's the purpose of the other side of it. I mean, I understand as far as coming in for a smoke or coming in as a shadow person and terrorizing people. I guess I just don't get the idea of why they would need a ship. You know what I mean? Or people have described themselves as being abducted and going on to this ship. Have they just manifested these images into the person's head? Or is there something more there?
Yeah. I will definitely answer that question.
Go ahead.
Definitely answer that question for you. But before I do, I'll let you finish, and then I'll let Stone go.
No, that was it. It was just other things like the cow mutilations, that have taken place. some of it just doesn't make sense as far as the purpose behind it and what they're trying to do. What it is they're trying to accomplish, other than maybe just again, it's another distraction or to discredit God, and I question that as well. So, where I stand right now on it is just one of those, I don't know. I'm just looking into it just like everything else to try to get somewhat of an understanding of what's going on.
Perfect. Stone?
My thoughts on the alien thing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's more of a case for aliens to be demonic or fallen angels than Bigfoot. But I used to be into aliens as biological entities from other planets, and I read some books about encounters. Like Whitley Strieber he wrote Communion, and he wrote Transformation, and his third book I think was Confirmation. And there was a movie that they made for Communion, which was his first book, and the movie was called Communion. And who's that actor, man? That cool actor, I forgot, he played Whitley Strieber in that movie. And Whitley Strieber was an author that had alien encounters supposedly, and he ended up writing books about his encounters. And he even questioned himself in the books, were they demonic, because he had such fearful experiences. But I think it kind of lends itself to a demonic fallen angel deception, because people, Satan would know that we would eventually worship science, and he knew that, and he kind of steered our culture, engineered it in such a way to where we do today. Most people do worship science, and the fact that the idea that there's another race of people on another planet that are more advanced than us and comes down here, that would really be appealing. I think he would know that to modern people. But the weird thing about aliens to me is that, if they are biological entities from another planet, why are they still studying and testing us? Like, why, you have a lot of accounts of sodomy in the Bible. And one of the commonalities with the alien abduction experience is you get the old butt probe. Why do these aliens, if they're so more advanced than we are, why do they have to anally probe us for hundreds of, or hundreds of years to find out information on us and stuff? Like, you'd think they could just do that once and get it over.
Or they have technology just to scan us. They wouldn't need to actually stick something in us.
Right. All those encounters are produce a lot of fear. And if it was a actual biological entity, that would be scary too, I guess. But in my opinion, there's really not much evidence of alien life from other planets. There's the T-111s or whatever they call them, the supposed government craft that are the big triangular craft that people see. And there's been a lot of, even in my area, in the Hudson Valley here, there's been encounters in the 80s and books written about them. And, that could be some kind of a government craft. But as far as lights in the sky, well, the devil's in charge of, he's, the principalities of the air, and he can come down as an angel of light. And maybe that's what we're seeing, on some of these compelling videos of, lights traveling at hundreds of miles an hour. It comes to a dead stop. Well, if you're the principality of the air, like, you can create that illusion, And now what even really backs that up for me more is the Pope and all his announcements about baptizing aliens, like Cowboy was saying, and that, they are, so in other words, they're redeemable and they can have salvation. And I mean, they ultimately, Satan wants to be above the Most High, So if they
Mm.
come down here and announce themselves, people are going to go for that. People are going to believe them and worship them if they do great, wondrous things and cure cancer and give us free energy. Who's to say it's not the fallen angels, People are going to worship them, and it's really setting up. It really seems like it's being set up for that. There's this guy Douglas Hamp that wrote a book called "Corrupting the Image," where he compared the devil's agenda to the alien experience over the last 30, 50 years, whatever, in this country. And there's a lot of parallels to that. And, I think that there's just a lot of parallels to, us being set up to worship them, and fairies were, or fairies back in the day, 1500s or whatever, there was a race of fairies called the Greys, and it was a pretty popular race of fairies. They just were called the Greys. People believed that they had these fairies that came to visit them, and they had airships, and they didn't look like modern day aliens, but they sure did travel in vehicles, and they were called the Greys, and they had physical bodies. And now, hundreds of years later, we're seeing stuff that we call them the gray aliens, and they look different, but I think it's just a mask on top of another mask, and that final mask that comes off is going to be something pretty evil, Like, why haven't they done anything good for us so far? Where's where's the physical evidence? You see a lot of people writing books. Oh, and the other thing is, I think on that is that you guys, I'm sure, have heard of MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network.
Yep.
It's been around for, I don't know, 30, 40 years or something. And it's just regular everyday people. It's international, and they're regular everyday people, and some of them are authors and scientists and whoever, but they created a network to where they're trying to get disclosure and answers from the government about aliens. And so, in other words, they're petitioning the government for information about aliens. They're into the subject. Some of them had encounters. A lot of them write books, and there's money involved. And within that community, there's been an active cover up um, within that community, even to say that they're actual creatures from other planets. In other words, like a lot of the time, you'll hear that the alien abduction experience can be stopped when you call out to the name of Jesus Christ. And a lot of these authors are hearing people's accounts of that and telling their stories, but they don't want anybody to know about that because they have a lot invested in their books and in what they think. And it goes against what they believe them and then what they want them to be, just like the podcast about Sasquatch I was on. What I was saying went against what those guys believed, and they were cool. They let me talk, and they put it out there for a day or whatever, and then they took down that video. I think that was the reason. So you have a group that's petitioning the government, MUFON, to get information. Meanwhile, like, who's going to trust the government when they come out with whatever they want to drop on us as far as what they know about aliens, And it's an active cover up within that community to, not tell the stories where people were like, yeah, and then it turned into a demon, or I was being abducted. I called upon the name of Jesus Christ and it stopped. And, the sleep paralysis thing that some people suffer from, I actually used to get that when I was a kid. And I would feel like I was paralyzed while I was falling asleep, and I was awake, but I couldn't move my body. I could only hear things. And it's funny because I was reading Communion years ago, the Whitley Strieber book, and he described something that I experienced. And I never told anybody about it, and I forgot about it until I read his book. And one of his experiences, just like mine, was that he was paralyzed in bed, and a, a lady popped her head in the room, and it was an old hag, and it's called old hag syndrome.
Yeah,
To,
I've dealt with old hag many
yeah,
times.
have you seen the old hag?
I fought her probably about 5 or 6 times.
Holy
Yeah, I
crap.
know old hag. I know who she is.
Yeah, I saw her one time while I was having sleep paralysis. She poked her head into my bedroom, and she was an old hag, and it was scary. And just that one time I saw it, but then years later I read about it, and I'm reading about it in a book that the guy's talking about. He thinks these are aliens from another planet, but even he questioned that in his own book. But then by the time the second or third book came out, he was just on the page where he was like, yeah, they're aliens, and he's making money. So who knows what influenced him to go back to the alien agenda? I'm sure it's the same thing in the Bigfoot community. You start talking about aliens and writing about alien books, you get an audience, and then you say, well, gee, maybe they're demonic, and your audience turns on you. So,
Right.
yeah, I lean towards the demonic deception with aliens because at the end of the day, Satan wants to be the most high. And if those aliens came down tomorrow, backed by the Vatican, and decided that our warring ways and everything would stop. They brought peace to the earth. Well, that's what the devil wants to do. He wants to come down and say good, nice things. And, it seems like so do they. And the other problem I have with the whole new alien thing in the modern day here is that, I used to read books on it, and a lot of people had many, many different opinions on it as to what they were, 5, 6, 10 opinions. And they were all very, there's a variety of opinions. Now, when you get these ancient alien shows on TV, they're interesting. They're cool to watch. I used to watch a few of them. I haven't had cable in so long. I don't know where they're at now, but I know that the main idea with a lot of these guys it's very homogenized, and then the idea is now that there's not too many other of a variety of opinions. The main idea is that they're beings that created us. They're ancient astronauts, and they created our culture back in the day, and we saw them way back and created us. So I don't really trust a lot of these TV shows now because there's no more new ideas on it. They're all very homogenized as to saying that they're ancient astronauts. They might have created human beings and influenced our culture. And, now you have everybody really, this next generation thinking that, where 20 years ago or whatever, people had a lot of different opinions on what they could be.
Right. All right. So I guess I'm up.
You're up.
I'm going to be way out there in my rabbit holes. And I'll address some of the things that you said about probing people, the cows, and all that, right? The aliens, right? Why are they coming down? They're probing us. Why are they? If they're this smart, why do they need to take us and whisk us away and probe us and inject us and do all these different things? And why are they pushing cows over and doing all this? Right? Here it is. Here's the thing. In my opinion, it all lies in part with the alien deception. So obviously they don't need to do that, right? They don't need to do that, but it plays in line with the deception of what the aliens are. And if you look at the aliens and the alien deception, and you can take every single religion in this world. Nobody, major religion, talks about aliens. So the alien deception, what that's going to create is they're going to come down, they're going to portray themselves as our creators, our leaders, when we're about to self-destruct. And it will go against every major religion in the world, therefore create the one true, right, religion, and that there are saviors that brings in the Antichrist. And
Right,
all
man.
the believers in Christ will fall for it. And so these aliens with these spaceships and all this stuff that they push, and now the Pope is going to rewrite the Bible. Don't forget that part. Not only baptize him, he's going to rewrite the Bible. You have to rewrite the Bible. When we come across them, think about that. How ludicrous is that, right? And so these aliens, it's for the alien deception. And they want you to think, where it comes back to what we know, the flat earth, right? We can get into that, is that we're not the center of the universe. We're not the main thing. We're just some little planet, mass space, where there's other entities out there. And that's where Nibiru comes in. Nibiru is a planet that comes around. If you look into it, every so often, that is actually holds the creators, the aliens that created us, that come around every so often. And we're just here to collect riches for them and be their slaves. And every time they come around, they give us new information to better our planet and more technology. Now, all this is deception from the truth. And this is what aliens are. Aliens are nothing more than the fallen angels deceiving us to think that they're the ones that created us. It's the massive alien deception to turn yourself unto the fallen ones than the truth. And when I always say, be careful, because in the scripture it says there will be the Antichrist that comes in the second coming of Christ afterwards. But be careful with Blue Beam Project and the deception that there won't be at least two false prophets that come before Jesus comes back. Right? Because Satan is a massive, major deception king that can create that. And create doubt and deception. And how many people that believe in God, Jesus as your Savior, believe that there could be another species out there that are probing us, that are coming out and attacking our cows, that we can't, that we see, and they turn our power off on our car, and all this crap that's been around. And, where is it written in the Word? Deception. Deception. Don't partake in that. Because once you partake in that, then you open your mind to beliefs other than the Word of God. Right? That's my thought.
There's a lot of parallels to that, man, I think. Especially what the Pope's saying now. I mean, maybe they don't care to cover it up anymore because, our government is just another arm or tendril of the Vatican anyway. So maybe they're like, all right, we
Vatican.
cover up because
Look at the Vatican. Look at the
Not just
Pope.
that, they're pushing it a lot. If you know, right now one of the movies getting ready to come out is Captive State. Uh, they're pushing as far as the idea that aliens come and they offer, like you said, all this great stuff, and then 10 years later we're being held against our wills. You know, there's a lot of that being pushed out there now to the masses as well. Um, you know, could be fallen angels. I sometimes wonder if it's actually the government themselves. Remember, Ronald Reagan made a statement a long time ago about that the next great war, our world, the next great war we were going to have was going to be a space war, interstellar war. So I sometimes wonder, you know, is it the government pulling a psyop as well? You know, have you guys ever thought about that?
Yeah, man, maybe like maybe they are actually they started out, decades ago as human beings they were experimenting on to get them to their morphology to look like aliens and they could have crates full of them, man, ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they're actually engineering that under the tutelage of the fallen angels, and or the government is creating the physicality of it with ships and human beings that have been so messed with genetically, because we all know they have science and stuff that they don't tell us about. That they could be presented as physical creatures, and they just look so foreign and alien. We don't know that they started out as human beings. Maybe they got MK Ultra to actually believe that they are aliens. Maybe they don't,
Well,
actually speak or something like.
and let's not forget, what did Trump just announce that in January of this year? That he wanted to start
Right?
what type of force?
Yeah, the Space Force now. What the hell is
Mm-hmm.
that about?
Exactly. So I agree with you. There's a deception. I just question, is it, I mean, obviously it's all evil. So I agree with you, Cowboy, on that. I just question as far as, is it Satan doing it in a way as far as just making a manifest, or is he working through the government to create a place like the Space Force? And then the probing and all
Because
that.
here's the thing, though, Prime, is the government's part of it.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
the
I
thing,
agree.
right?
That's what I'm saying. That's all.
Yeah.
I look at it from that aspect, especially when you got Trump all of a sudden, here's our president standing up saying we're going to start a space force, because actually they're planning to make and ironically they're going to put the headquarters here where NASA's at. They've been talking about that for a while now down here. So that's where I lead at, and I got a question that especially when you hear Reagan sit there and say this, that our next great one is going to be an interstellar war. Remember, he was all that money in that BS program, the Star Wars. Remember that? Did you
Oh
guys
yeah,
ever
yep.
hear?
Star Wars. Yep.
It was supposed to be defunct. It was like all this other crap that they lean out there in front of you. I mean, and it's a deception for. Is it to break the religion, or is it just to put the masses under lock and key again?
Yeah, and it could be a combination of those two things, like a government. Some of them that you see lights in the sky are demonic entities and principalities, and they're showing themselves to people to back that up. And then you have the government led by Satan at the end of the day,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, because I think he's pretty much the leader of the Illuminati, ultimately. And they're backing it up with physicality, physical ships, and maybe even physical entities.
Yeah.
And now it's in the culture. It's been in the culture for a while, and all the stuff on TV, like I was saying, it's homogenized to say that they're came down and created us. And now you have the Pope backing it. It's like, you got a lot of things lining up, man. There's a lot of dots that can be connected to to that.
Mhm. I mean, in the end, it's all deception, and my where I go at the end of the day is I believe in the Lord Jesus Christ as my Savior, and I firmly believe that when the time comes, I pray and hope that I'm not going to be here to see any of it.
Let me put it this way. Let me. I'm gonna take it down a notch. Let's bring it down a notch. Let's say Sasquatch isn't a animal in the woods that has been able to elude human man as far as being able to decipher what he is, she, they, whatever, for this amount of time. And it is just an animal in the woods that is very intelligent yet cannot communicate other than making noises and scare people off when they come across their territory. And let's say aliens are really a species from another planet, galaxy, that has probed us, kidnapped people, done everything that all these witnesses have proclaimed, but are nothing more than just a species from another planet. What does that say about your belief in the Bible and what the Word of God is? What does that do? If those two things are fact, the way that people perceive them to be, in that realm, what does that do for any average believer of Christ that views it that way, or anybody that isn't? What does that do for their beliefs? Let's look at it that way. Let's take it the backdoor way. What does that do? What will that do then in your beliefs? What do you think?
As far as like see, and that's where I believe that's why it should be etched in your heart. I mean, that's not going to sway my belief whatsoever. Um, Only because again, I feel in my heart what I know, that God exists and that Jesus is my Savior and He came here to forgive me for my sins. I don't care if all of a sudden there's ships in the sky. I guess that's just the way I look at it. I feel that right there should be a question for each individual being on this planet.
Exactly. That was my point. That is exactly my point. And therefore, if you look at the bigger picture of it,
yeah,
how many people will be deceived by that?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it says it all the way down, man. That not everyone's going to be able to go. I mean, as much as it's a crappy thought, but I mean that's the truth. You know that. I mean, there's people that don't believe in God, period, right now on this planet, regardless of that there's no ships in the sky or aliens or Sasquatch or what. They just don't believe in all the way around. I mean that's just based upon the individual spirit.
Yeah, man. I mean, a lot of lukewarm Christians, a lot of Christians that have nothing to do with conspiracy theories.
Mm-hmm.
I think go for that, and a lot of Catholics, because the leader of the Catholics is the Pope, and he's saying it's coming right out of his mouth. So a lot of people are going to go for that. A lot of people have never heard the ideas that we're presenting here,
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things that you got to be strong in your own faith, no matter what. There's people, you got to remember, there's even people that lose lose their faith because they get dealt some bad moments in their life, forgetting that, you're going to get tested. We're all always going to be tested. I mean, come on, that's in Job. Look how much God loved Job and look what He did to him. what he allowed to have happen in the testing.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I mean that's just as far as where my standpoint on it is it's intriguing, yeah, and I look at all angles of it, but I mean at the end of the day, it doesn't sway me one way or the other as far as what I believe in my heart to be as far as
Mhm.
the truth.
Well,
Yeah,
you know,
one.
One Life Man brought up a great point. Ancient people did not know what they saw in the sky and described it to man with wings, metaphor, and to UFO. But again, let's go back to the hieroglyphics. They had UFOs and aliens and hieroglyphics, just like they did have Bigfoot. To me,
Yeah,
it all connects. It's
yeah.
not, you know what I mean? There's something to that, and the reason is why? Why? You know, and and how would you look at that and try to analyze it and understand it? Um, to understand, is it deception? Is it, Satan's deception? And what are we to buy into? What are we not to buy into? And how are we to understand it? You know?
Well,
Yep.
and again, that's why I said it's going to come down to the discernment of the actual individual of how they're going to either buy into it or not buy into it. I mean, it's each individual. I guess the way I look at life is like, look, we come into this world alone. You're born by yourself as a baby, and one day we're all going to meet the end. It's going to be our time up. That's something again you're going to have to face alone. And when it comes time to go before our creator, then you got to account for what you've done. I guess for myself, I just try to live my day. I live in the moment because the next moment's not guaranteed to any one of us. You know that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So all you can do is live the best life you can, treat each other with love and respect. I mean, even to the point where we may not disagree or we may not agree on everything. But I mean, honestly, if we all agreed all the time on everything, can you imagine how boring it would be? I mean, what would we do if we all agreed all the time? I mean, there's going to be people that are going to disagree. And I feel like at the end of the day, the one thing that at least majority of people should look at is to at least agree to even disagree on how we see it or how you look at it. I mean, there's so much, man. I mean, you think about it. I mean, yes, this subject we're talking about aliens and Sasquatch. I mean, but you think about all the other crazy things that are out there, like I said, between Mandela effect and the paranormal, and you even got people. What there's even rumors and that about dragons or mermaids or
Mm-hmm.
you know
So
it, it,
you want to know my thoughts on dragons and mermaids?
I
I'll
don't
tell
know.
you.
Let's hear.
Crazy as they come. Okay, so first of all, with dragons, um, everybody wants to know, why are there no dinosaurs in the Bible? Why? Right? Do I think that the dinosaurs that science shows us are actual what dinosaurs look like? No. What I do understand is that the Bible, when it speaks of dinosaurs, it was dragons. Dinosaurs were always known as dragons until, well, I can't remember the year, but they changed the name from dragons to dinosaurs. And then science took over, and then they changed what dragons are, because if you really look at dragons, it becomes biblical.
Hmm.
Another deception. Um, there, you will not find any real dinosaur bones anywhere. Everything museum you go to, they're all fake. It's not even real bones.
Yeah.
And dragons are very real, and they're because I believe that biblically, because it talks about dragons
Mm-hmm.
and mermaids. Mermaids are fall into the category of what? They fall into the category of mythology with
Yeah.
Zeus and all of and the Kraken and all of that. Well, guess what? We always were told that's mythology.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can find it all within Scripture, especially in Revelations.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, again, more deception of truth. How crazy is it? Look at the Revelations, how scary those creatures are. There, it's right there. The Kraken is in Revelations, right?
Give me Revelation.
Mermaids, all unicorns, all these things, Revelations,
Yeah.
right, man? I mean, and the beast in Revelations scare the hell out of you. Churches will not touch Revelations. They won't. It will scare the hell out of people.
That doesn't fill you. That doesn't fill the seats, man. That doesn't bring in the money. People don't want to hear about fire and
Right?
brimstone. Come on now, you know better than that. They're not going to sit
Right?
here and preach holy hell, holy fire because that's going to scare people out. They want that money. Organized religion.
Seriously. So yeah. So when people talk about uh, mermaids, the Kraken, uh, all these mythological creatures, Zeus, all that, all the mythological uh, part of it, that's some real stuff. That's reality. Yet they call it myth. They
I
call
know.
aliens,
Did you
conspiracy
ever see
theory. They
where?
call Bigfoot conspiracy theory. You see how it works? Like this is
Yeah,
the ongoing thing that they use. Satan uses for deception and uses that deception throughout time for his power to control and deceive people through each timeline. Right now, mermaids are nothing. Yeah, if you look at any history
they've
of
been there too.
going back, these people. I mean, why would there be so many people that described it, drew pictures of it, and had encounters with it? Why? That many people made it up? That many people made up Bigfoot? That many people made up aliens? No, not at all. Not at all.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
And think about even with the Kraken, like you said, that was what, a giant squid, right?
Yeah, took down ships,
Yeah,
right?
and did they not just recently, a few years ago? I could have sworn I saw where the news was shown in China. They actually had one
Yeah.
was it
giant
alive?
squid. No, I think it was dead. They had, but they showed it. It was literally the size of a freaking boat of a ship liner.
Yeah, wow, man. I mean, yeah, they found the beaks of those things and the whales of in the stomachs of whales or something,
Yeah,
which is kind of weird because a whale, would a whale eat a squid? I don't know. I have heard something like that before though,
But here's the
especially a
thing:
giant
is
one.
that if you really look at squids, they're actually as big as whales. They can get as big as whales. That's
Yeah,
crazy, right? I
bigger.
mean, right? So, I mean, if we look at all this, um, where I look at is that we look at things, try to make things so simple in our lives, and when we look at the bigger picture of like the craziness of what could be, the guy that's half horse, half man. That's
Centaur.
crazy. Is that crazy? A guy that's half man, half horse. That's crazy, right?
Yeah,
Okay. You know what? It's real. There is a guy
I
that's
know.
half man, half horse. right, is demonic.
Is that why
Yeah.
they call you cowboy?
Right? No, that would be half cow, half man.
Your mistake wishes he was hung like a horse.
But you see where I'm going with this, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly. Where you going?
and so it's so out of our realm, and the problem I've always had with churches is they try to dumb it down so much because they don't want to scare the people. And I give them credit for this, I really do, because um, they're into saving souls by having people give themselves to Christ, and I give them that. The problem I have is that the society has been set up through the religions of controlling it, that they don't actually get into the seriousness of the reality of it all, where it is beyond our comprehension that we see today. We could go watch a sci-fi movie and get freaked out and go, wow, it was a sci-fi movie. But you know what? The reality is in the reality of the world and God created and the entities out there is much, much more. Yeah, they hide that from people. Some people need it to be hidden. In my opinion, I always felt that if you went from the Word of God from the beginning all the way through the Bible, through Revelations, it would really open people's eyes up more to the reality of salvation and not
Yeah.
be fooled by all these deceptions that Satan pulls. Because anything that's scary that's in the Bible, most people in religions that are giving themselves to Christ freak out on. Like, heaven forbid that they're pagan holidays. Heaven forbid there's really methodical creatures. Heaven forbid that there's a seven-horned, creature. Heaven forbid there's the Kraken hidden for 1,000 years. Heaven forbid, right? It's like overwhelming for them, and they just want to be in this like little safe heaven of like, be good and forgive and turn your cheek. Well, forget turn your cheek. That's horrible. Turn your cheek. Stand up for what your beliefs are. Stand up against that
Well, you got
deception.
fear is a lie. It's always been. Fear is a lie
Right?
that is a construct that set this to oppress your mind and your spirit. That's the way I see it. And not to have fear. I mean, if you're saved by Jesus and your faith in your heart, then you shouldn't have any fear, no matter of all the fire and brimstone that's coming down.
You're
You
right.
should.
What is the most? Let me ask you this, you guys. What is the most used word in the Bible? You know?
Yeah, man, I got to think about that.
I'll
Oh,
help you.
the word the maybe.
Fear. Fear. God uses have no fear more than any other statement in the Bible. Have no fear.
Exactly.
Stop it. You see that? Have no fear. You hear that? Have no fear. You see that? Have no fear. Have faith in
Right?
me. Have no fear. There's
Exactly.
only one thing God says to have fear of in the Bible. What is that? Only one. What is it? What is the only thing you're to fear according to the Bible?
And not for me, the fear would be of not being in his presence.
Yes, fear of God. The only
Yeah.
fear you should have is of God's wrath. That's it. Only fear you should ever have. That's it. One fear. Other than that, have no fear. Have no fear. Have no fear. Everything that comes in the Bible, that's like, whoa, what the hell is that? Have no fear. Have no fear on that. Right? Have no fear of the alien deception. Have no fear of what this Bigfoot is as entity. Have no fear of the paranormal. Have no fear of the unicorn, the mermaid, the kraken. Right? Have no fear, right, of your boss. Have no fear of your spouse. Have no fear of if you're going to make your rent. Have no fear if you're going to have food on your plate tomorrow. Have no fear, right? Only one thing to fear.
Have no fear of death.
Yeah. Separation from God. Have only one fear. And no, yeah, no fear of dying. You don't die. You don't die. Nobody dies. That's the one thing I always trip on. The dying word. Nobody dies. You don't die. Nobody dies. Right? You don't die. Your spirit never dies.
Exactly.
Your spirit never dies. You don't die. Where you go, I don't know. That's up to between you and God.
Yeah.
But I believe I have my faith. Do I think I'm going to make it in the gates of heaven? Whew. I don't know, man. I'd be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know. I hope so. I put my trust in God. I believe in Him. I talk about Him. I try to share Him. I don't know. I'll do what I can.
That's all we can do, brother. That's
You know?
like what I said the other day when we were talking on your other live stream. When that debate was going down between the flat or the ball. At the end of the
Right.
day, it doesn't matter. We're all still here. We still have to go about our normal lives. It's just it is what it is. And I guess that's why I look at a lot of things, and I may sound cryptic with what I'm saying about my opinion on it. Well, because at the end of the day, I can't tell you. I don't know. I'm still going to get up tomorrow, or hopefully, God willing, that I wake up in the morning and go about their days just like you got to. You got to get up and go to work. Stone's got to get up, go to work. Me, I'm busy packing, getting ready to leave. That's it, and we move on. But I myself, from my own standpoint, I try to live and love and make sure that I don't cross anyone, I don't offend anyone, and I do my best to, wish the best upon everybody. That's why I always tell you guys, if you notice, even when I send messages, I tell everyone, even in my comments, I hope y'all are having a great day, because I really do. I hope everyone has a great day out there in the world. I pray that everyone gets to know God and gets to know Jesus. But that's going to be up to each of the individual, because that's the beauty part about what God gave us was free will to make those decisions.
Yeah, you can't have true love. You can't have, and love is the most overrated word in the world. But you can't have real true love without free will. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's impossible.
I agree.
I mean, think about it. Like, I think one of the best things I heard was guys say, like, so can you imagine, like, you were able to get a wife, and this wife you knew would love you to death and be obedient to everything that you did, but it wasn't true love. It was because you created that. Would you really feel true love?
No.
Or no, you wouldn't. So when people trip on God with His free will, God gives you a choice, and you're not going to love God based off Him making you love Him, because that goes against everything He says. So you have to be able to have the free will to choose to love God or choose not to love God. Right?
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Right? You'd be a slave pretty much,
Be a slave, right? And people always say, like, well, I get this. Well, if God's so real, how come He doesn't just show Himself? Why is He not right here? Well, here's the thing. God has even said, He's done it in the Old Testament. I can show myself unto you in front of you, yet you many of you will still deny me.
And see,
Think
now,
about that. That's crazy.
I believe he does show himself to us all the time.
Right?
I just think a lot of people brush it off or don't realize it.
Right?
Right.
And
Right.
here's something to add to that. Satan, Lucifer, Michael, stood right next to God, right-hand man. As close as God is the closest angel ever to God. Right? And what happened to him? What happened to him? So why do you think us as humans doesn't mean that God can't do everything in his power to show himself unto you, that people will still turn from him? When somebody who stood right next to him and watched him create us, create the world and the universe, fell from his grace. Think of that. That's intense right there. That is intense. If that doesn't show you free will, I don't know what else can.
Yeah. True. Well, I don't know about you fellas, but it's late here on the East Coast.
Yeah, me too, man. I got to get up early actually, and getting pretty late for the East, cowboy.
I hear you. Well, I appreciate you guys coming on. I appreciate everybody in the chat room and chatting away. And I'm hoping that we can pick this up later. Do watch for either Saturday or Sunday. We're going to do a different series on the Gateway Project, which is going to be another very intense subject. Very intense. And we'll be doing that, the three of us, either Saturday or Sunday. So keep an eye out for that. And love you all. And thank you all for joining. Thank you, Prime and Stone Brothers. Love you. Love everybody in the chat
No
room.
problem, brother. I had a great time, man. It was really good talk.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Marilyn. It definitely was enlightening with a lot that we were discussing here. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, we can go a lot further with that, in the future. So
Absolutely. All right, brothers and sisters in the chat. Love you all. And you guys all peace out. And we'll see you soon. I'll probably see you guys all tomorrow night on Scarab Show. So
Freaky Friday.
yeah, see you guys all there. All right.
Take it easy, Crip. Take it easy, cowboy. Good night, guys.